Chapter 1603. The colorful flowers released the most dazzling splendor in the dark world. It was exactly because of these colorful creatures that the opposite shore realm wasn't so monotonous. I feel like there's a very special energy fluctuation here, Tina said. No way. These are all flowers. Even though they're very spiritual, there's nothing special about them. And Lin unleashed his divine sense to survey his surroundings, but he didn't discover anything. Tina wrinkled her nose as if she was following a certain scent as she traversed through the sea of flowers. And Lin and Su Xiaolan had no choice but to follow along. They were also very curious about what Tina had discovered. There were all kinds of flowers in the opposite shore realm, but they all had one thing in common, and that was that they all glowed. The sea of flowers that Lin traversed through was also a sea of light. The black stem, the tender and lustrous leaves, the bewitching and gorgeous petals, and the bursts of either quiet or fragrant aroma. The aroma that could make one lose their mind, the deadly poison powder, and the heaven and earth formation that could cause illusions. Beautiful yet deadly. If a creature with a normal cultivation accidentally entered this sea of flowers, they would instantly lose themselves and might not even be able to find their way out. They would slowly die here and become nutrients for the flowers. Of course, Lin was able to see through this level of illusionary formation with a single glance. Tina's constitution was extremely close to nature to begin with, so she was able to see something different. "It's here!" Tina yelled. Lin and Su Xiaolan immediately flew over, and their eyes widened. What is this?" Lin was a little shocked. There was a flower that was half the height of a grown man before him. All of its petals were round and smooth, just like mushrooms. However, that wasn't the important part. The important part was that there were all kinds of expressions on the mushrooms. Some of the mushroom petals were grinning, and there were even a few white bony teeth protruding from them. Some of the mushroom petals were as bright as blood, and there were angry expressions on them. Some of them were bawling, and their petals were wet. Some of them were smiling with a comical expression, and their eyes were squinting. Some of them were even covering their mouths and laughing shyly, and Lin saw many vivid expressions from the flowers before him. They could almost be made into emoticons. "Do you want to know how I feel? Flowers represent my heart." "Is this the special thing you were talking about?" Su Xiaolan asked curiously. She tried to sense the flower, but there was nothing special about it. It was probably a strange species. "Actually, you can take it back and play with it." Lin was a little interested. When the flowers on the ground heard Lin's words, some of them looked bashful, some were furious, and some even spat at Lin in disdain, as if they despised Lin. Lin touched the nectar that was spat on his face and licked it. He chuckled and said, "So sweet." The corner of Su Xiaolan's mouth twitched uncontrollably. Tina also snorted as she looked at her master with a hint of disdain. Lin remained unmoved. He turned to Tina and asked, "Now tell me, what is this strange flower? Don't tell me it's just a strange flower." Tina shook her head with a smile, and her emerald eyes lit up with excitement. "Master, this is no ordinary flower. We've picked up a treasure." "Something that's a treasure in your eyes?" Lin's interest was clearly piqued. The goddess of creation's standards were extremely high. In the core immortal realm of the divine mirror world, spirit-rank fruits and immortal-rank treasures were nothing more than snacks to her. What could make Tina this excited? The semi-transparent wings on Tina's back flapped gently, and she landed lightly on the mushroom-shaped flower petal. The petal immediately revealed an angry expression. Its face turned red, and two black lines rose up on its round head like eyebrows. It bared its teeth, revealing an expression of anger. "That lively expression reminds me of Xiao Hong." Su Xiaolan couldn't help but chuckle. Tina reached out and gently caressed the flower with her tiny, white hands. Not only was that mushroom-shaped flower petal enraged, but all of the other 98 petals were also enraged, as if they were saying, "Don't touch me." Lin and Su Xiaolan were both quite amused. A series of golden inscriptions began to appear on Tina's forehead, each of which was imbued with an indescribable sense of divinity, as if a paramount god had personally carved down a paramount command. The inscriptions formed a peculiar divine seal. The little fairy's aura also transformed in that instant. Her figure seemed to be pulled up infinitely, transcending beyond the world. The entire world seemed to be in the palm of her hand. With a flip of her hand, she could overturn the earth and cover the sky with another. Anlin was truly astonished this time. "I've only sensed this aura from the three pure ones and Nuwa. No, I can also sense it from Tina in the divine mirror world. But isn't this the Tai Chu continent?" Su Xiaolan was also astonished. Could it be that little Na can already unleash God of Creation stage power? Even Tao integration stage super mighty figures like Anlin and Su Xiaolan were stunned by Tina's aura, let alone the mushroom-shaped flower. Expressions of shock and horror appeared on all of the flower petals, and they immediately converged to form a red ball before separating from their roots and rolling into the distance. However, Tina materialized a huge vital energy hand in the next instant before grabbing onto the ball with a wide smile on her face. "Hee hee, you've finally revealed your true form. Underworld Tao Flower." The ball trembled uncontrollably in the vital energy hand and didn't say anything. "Underworld Tao Flower?" Anlin was dumbstruck. Su Xiaolan finally discovered that something was amiss when the flower revealed its true form, and her expression also shifted drastically. This little thing's aura has suddenly become extremely profound, and it can draw upon the Tao of heaven and earth to conceal its power. Tina stroked the round red ball and nodded with a smile. Immortal rank treasures are extremely rare and ethereal. They're extremely rare and precious treasures. Divine rank treasures are extremely rare even on the entire Tai Chu continent. However, this underworld Tao flower is a supreme treasure imbued with the Tao of its own. Normal plants have a certain chance of attaining sentience after living for a long time, but this underworld Tao flower has attained Tao after living for a long time. If it weren't for the fact that I'm the goddess of creation and am extremely sensitive to the Tao of heaven and earth, I would most likely have been deceived by its mundane appearance and failed to see the Tao intent hidden within it. It's only one step away from Tao integration stage tribulation transcendence. Anlin and Su Xiaolan both drew a sharp intake of breath as their eyes widened with shock. They stared blankly at the red ball in Tina's vital energy hand. This mushroom-shaped flower was going to Tao integration stage? They had thought that Xiao Hong was already freakish enough after attaining the power of the divine Tao while basking in the sun. But this mushroom-shaped flower was going to attain Tao after living for a long time? And it was going to silently progress to Tao integration stage tribulation transcendence here? Chapter 1604. Anlin and Su Xiaolan were initially astonished before staring at the mushroom flower with a scorching light in their eyes. This was a Tao integration stage flower. Anyone would be tempted by this, wouldn't they? Su Xiaolan swallowed involuntarily, and Anlin was drooling as well. The mushroom flower couldn't stand Anlin's lecherous expression any longer, and it opened up its petals before spitting another mouthful of saliva onto Anlin's face. Anlin wiped the nectar off his face before licking his finger. "So sweet." "Tina, Su Xiaolan." "Anlin, please watch your image." As a professional protector, she couldn't bear to watch this any longer. Anlin was quite calm as he stared at the flower with a scorching light in his eyes. "Little Na, we finally found it, so what are you going to do with it? Do you want me to look after it for you? After you grow up, I'll—" He didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before the sound of unfamiliar footsteps suddenly erupted from behind him. Forgive me for being blunt, but this is daylight robbery," a male voice sounded. Anlin and Su Xiaolan were both given a fright. No one had ever been able to approach them within a 5-kilometer radius. When did this person approach them? Anlin immediately turned around to look at the approaching man with a cautious expression. The man appeared to be a young man in his 20s. He wore a light purple Taoist robe and had a gentle expression on his face. He wasn't all that handsome, and in fact, he gave off a feeling of weakness and gentleness. A human? There were humans in the opposite shore realm, a place filled with ghosts? And Lin's expression shifted, but he didn't act recklessly. Instead, he spoke with a serious expression. How could you say this is daylight robbery? I'm Little Na's master, so what's wrong with me looking after this thing for her? The man faltered slightly before bursting into laughter. This is my garden. He pointed at the red ball in Tina's hand. I planted this. And Lin was dumbfounded and didn't know what to say. He had initially thought that the other party was just rebuking him for trying to take over Tina's flower and calling him a robbery. However, he didn't think that the owner of the flower would be pointing fingers at him and Tina, the two bandits. Heath. Tina's little hands trembled, and she tossed the flower onto the ground with an adorable smile. Su Xiaolan held her forehead with one hand and sighed helplessly. I knew it. How could it be possible to pick up a treasure so casually? So it's a treasure that someone planted here. After a short shock, Lin immediately bowed and apologized. Fellow Taoist, I'm really sorry for offending you before. Even with his strength, he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation. It was obvious that the man standing in front of him was not simple. He was just a little puzzled. Why did he have to meet a big boss every time he went out? This was too unlucky. He hoped that the big boss would have a good temper. At this moment, the flower extended its petals, branches, and roots again before blooming on the ground. It seemed to have found a backer, and it straightened its body before spitting at Lin. The nectar was then splashed onto Lin's face. Lin didn't dare to be perverted anymore. He wiped the nectar off his face before stowing it away into his storage ring. The nectar of the underworld Tao flower was at least a high-rank spirit item, so it was quite valuable. The purple-robed man wasn't angry at all. Instead, a smile appeared on his face at the sight of Tina releasing the underworld Tao flower as he appraised Tina with an intrigued expression. You're very interesting. You're clearly not a god of creation, but you can sense the aura of the underworld Tao flower, and you can even unleash the aura of a god of creation. Tina was instantly displeased to hear this, and she raised her chin with her hands on her hips. What? Are you trying to tell me that I'm a fake god of creation? The man immediately waved a hand. No. That's not what I meant. What I'm trying to say is that there aren't many beings in this world that I can't see through, and you're one of them. Oh. Tina nodded, but she thought to herself, what the F***ck does it have to do with me that you can't see through me? And Lin felt like this man was speaking like an otherworldly mighty being, so he took the initiative to break the awkward silence. Senior, if there's nothing else, we'll be taking our leave now. The purple-robed man didn't say anything. Instead, he picked a colorful flower and sniffed it before turning to Lin. I've heard of you, Lin. You're one of the most popular people on the Tai Chu continent recently, and you're one of them that I can't see through. Oh. Lin nodded with a smile, but he was thinking to himself, what the F***ck does it have to do with me that you can't see through me? He took a glance at Su Xiaolan and Tina, indicating that he was about to leave. If they continued to stay here, the purple-robed man might continue to say some weird things. As such, Lin naturally chose to leave. Wait! The purple-robed man seemed to have seen through Lin's intentions, and he suddenly said, It's fate that we've met. Aren't you interested in the underworld Tao flower? If you can solve a problem for me, I'll give you this underworld Tao flower. The purple-robed man smiled. Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina's footsteps faltered as their eyes lit up at the same time. All 99 petals of the underworld Tao flower suddenly displayed pitiable expressions, as if they were extremely sad and pained by the purple-robed man's decision. Senior, you have a good eye for talent. Lin smiled as he vowed, There's nothing in this world that I, Lin, can't do. Even if it's impossible, I can make it possible. Tina also patted her chest. My goddess Tina isn't someone to be trifled with. Su Xiaolan was a little wary as she looked at the smiling man. Why did you choose us? If it's too dangerous, we won't do it. It's not dangerous, it's not dangerous. The man waved his hands in denial. I'm only asking you to do this purely because I can't see through you, so there's a chance that you'll be able to create a different outcome and free me from karma. If you succeed, then the underworld Dao flower will be yours. Please go ahead, Senior. Anlin's eyes glowed with excitement. The purple-robed man heaved a sigh of relief before looking up into the sky. My name is Ding Xiaoru. You might not be familiar with this name, but if I tell you that I'm Patriarch Zhu Yin of the Ghost Tribe, you'll know who I am, right? Anlin and Su Xiaolan's expressions both shifted upon hearing this, and waves of shock surged through their hearts. Patriarch Zhu Yin was the paramount god of the opposite shore realm. It was said that he lived in the land of extreme darkness with the face of a human and the body of a dragon. His body was as massive as a mountain range with a length of over 10,000 kilometers, and his every move controlled heaven and earth. He could see day as day, roar as night, blow as winter, exhale as summer, and exhale as wind. It was also said that he wielded the true essence of life and death. Once he appeared, he could command the entire ghostly army, regardless of what cultivation base or status the ghost tribe possessed. To put it in simpler terms, he was the most powerful and revered god of the ghost tribe. Anlin took a deep breath to calm himself down. Never would he have thought that the feeble man before him would be such a terrifying being. Senior Zhu Yin, what do you need our help with? Anlin asked. Call me Ding Xiaoru, the purple-robed man corrected before a disconsolate expression appeared on his face. I've fallen out of love. Anlin's face was filled with question marks. Patriarch Zhu Yin continued, I've fallen out of love, and my cultivation base has fallen. Su Xiaolan. Anlin. Chapter 1605. The paramount god of the Hellside Ghost Tribe, Patriarch Zhu Yin, had fallen out of love? Tui. That wasn't the point. The point was, he had fallen out of love? Anlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina were all struck by a sense of incredulity. They stared blankly at the purple-robed man, not knowing what to say. Ding Xiaoru didn't seem to be surprised by their reactions. In reality, many powerful beings wore the same expression upon hearing this news, and some of them were so shocked that a divine mountain had cracked open. The purple-robed man heaved a resigned sigh. I shouldn't have told anyone about something as humiliating as falling out of love. A perplexed expression appeared on Anlin's face. You're a god of creation, how could your cultivation base have fallen out of love? That's too much of a joke, it's impossible. Ding Xiaoru shook his head and heaved a forlorn sigh. You wouldn't think that way if you knew about my love life. Anlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina all turned to Ding Xiaoru with anticipation in their eyes, as if to say, Please begin your speech, mighty one. Ding Xiaoru spoke in a faint voice, I am the ruler of the realm of extreme darkness, and I can transform into countless forms. I have a human face and a snake body, a human face and a dragon body, a dark fire ghost body. These are the most common forms that I show to the world, but they are not my favorite form. Anlin looked at this man with an indescribable aura and speculated, Your favorite form is the human form? You fell in love with a human woman? Ding Xiaoru nodded before shaking his head. I like the human form, but the woman I love is not a human woman. Instead, it's a female ghost. Anlin, there was nothing wrong with a paramount god of the ghost tribe falling in love with a female ghost. It was a dark and windy night. Ding Xiaoru recalled the past. He was in pain, but he was also happy. He slowly told the story, and so on and so on. Tears welled up in Anlin and Su Xiaolan's eyes. Tina even shed tears upon hearing this. How touching! I thought I wouldn't fall in love with a ghost. I'm the supreme god of the ghost race, so my worldview is completely different from that of mortals. But she's so special, and I was caught off guard, so I couldn't help myself. Li Yin became a ghost immortal with a lifespan of over 1 million years, and she appeared before me in her human form. Naturally, I transformed into a human form and stayed with her forever. Ding Xiaoru continued, "You can't imagine how deeply I love her. I am a Genesis tier god, and the colored glass world of the Yellow Springs is a world that I created. Everything in my world is built for her. Every blade of grass, every tree, every mountain, every river, every sea, every living thing, they were all built according to her imagination and her hobbies. They all have her shadow in them. This is my world, and it is also her world. I thought she and I would be in love forever." As the purple-robed man spoke, a pained expression appeared on his face. Anlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina were a little excited. They were finally getting to the point. "It was a dark and windy night," Ding Xiaoru continued. Anlin's lips twitched. There was no sun in the opposite shore realm, and it was always a dark and windy night. Why did he have to describe it like that? Was it romantic? Even though he was grumbling to himself, he still listened patiently. Yin and I were strolling through this sea of flowers hand in hand. All of a sudden, a woman in a colorful dress descended from the sky with immortal qi swirling around her. I have to admit, she was extremely beautiful. No matter what race or angle one judged her from, she was as beautiful as an otherworldly work of art that only existed in the heavens. All living beings have a certain degree of common sense when it comes to appreciating beauty. Maybe it's because I've been in human form for too long. I actually feel a kind of affection for her. Of course, this feeling is from the perspective of appreciating beauty. It's like looking at a very beautiful painting. It has nothing to do with emotions, Ding Xiaoru explained. And then? You didn't fall in love with someone else, did you? Anlin asked. As he spoke, he was already imagining the man falling in love with that celestial maiden, thereby breaking the woman's heart. In the end, he discovered that his true love was the original woman, and he was filled with remorse after losing her. Ding Xiaoru became even more disconsolate. I fell in love with her, but I didn't think that she would fall in love even more thoroughly and fall faster than I did. If I'm immersed in it visually, then she's completely conquered by that woman. Anlin, Su Xiaolan and Tina. What the hell was this? Was there something wrong with the plot? Ding Xiaoru clenched his fists with an aggrieved and exasperated expression. That woman said she came to the opposite shore realm to train and observe the laws of heaven and earth. I wasn't too wary at the time, so I entertained her for a few days. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, I tried my best to avoid too much contact with her. Hence, Yin was the one who interacted with her during those few days. Their relationship improved very quickly, and they soon became good sisters who could talk about anything. I didn't think too much about it at the time. I only felt that Yin had found a good friend, and I was happy for her. Until one day, the paramount god of the ghost tribe trembled, as if he were recalling some sort of nightmare. Anlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina were all very nervous. It was a dark and windy night. I went out to hunt a rare soul beast and came back early. Then, I saw Yin and her kissing amidst a sea of flowers. I was completely dumbstruck at the time, and my mind went completely blank. Anlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina were also dumbstruck upon hearing this, and their minds went completely blank. He had been cuckolded. Patriarch Zhu Yin had been cuckolded, and he had been cuckolded by a woman. Waves of shock surged through everyone's hearts. They had thought that Patriarch Zhu Yin's heartbreak and fall in cultivation base would be shocking enough, but they didn't think that they would hear about Patriarch Zhu Yin being cuckolded as well. Ding Xiaoru clawed at his own face with a pained expression. I charged toward Yin like a madman and asked her what she was doing. I simply couldn't believe that Yin was such a ghost. However, Yin told me that this was her choice, and that every living being should face their truest feelings. She said that she had fallen in love with that woman, and that she was unable to extricate herself from it. If she continued to lie to me, it would be disrespectful to me, and she kept apologizing to me. The other woman even said that heterosexual love was completely influenced by the genes of reproduction, and that only same-sex love was the purest form of love. Arg. Pure love my f*ck. I really wanted to tear her apart. Unlin and Su Xiaolan were both astonished. That woman really was a monster. May I ask who that woman was, Senior? Unlin asked with a curious expression. Ding Xiaoru replied with an enraged expression, she was the Moon Palace Master, Chang Yi. Su Xiaolan and Tina were both astonished. Unlin was enlightened upon hearing this. Chapter 1606. The mighty Moon Palace leader, the #1 beauty of the Kingdom of the Nine States, had cuckolded a paramount god of the Ghost tribe. This news sent Unlin and the others into a state of deep shock. Unlin was a lot less astonished. After all, he had already mentally prepared himself for this. After all, Chang Yi had always been that way. She was invincible in terms of beauty and charm, and she had always been very attracted to girls. As such, it was very easy for her to turn some innocent and naive young women gay. Unlin was aware of this, but Su Xiaolan and Tina didn't. They felt like the image of a celestial maiden Chang Yi had been completely overturned. Their mouths gaped open, and they didn't know what to say. At this moment, Ding Xiaoru's expression was on the verge of breaking down. I wanted to kill Chang Yi on the spot, but Yin protected her with her life on the line, so there was nothing I could do. Only then did I realize that Yin had really fallen in love with someone else. She had fallen in love with Chang Yi, and she had truly fallen in love with her. The love that I once thought would last until the seas ran dry and the rocks would rot away, just like that, it suddenly collapsed and shattered into pieces. The paramount god of the Ghost tribe looked up into the sky with tears shimmering in his eyes. You have to know that I loved her very, very much. Even the world I created with the power of the God of Creation stage was modeled after her. Everything in that world had her shadow in it, hence, when I lost her, the world I created also collapsed. That was the end of the world, an end that even I was unable to prevent. Matter was reduced to nothingness, the heart of the world was shattered, and everything began to fade away, the world was destroyed, and as the God of creation, I also suffered the most severe backlash in my life. Furthermore, my mental state was unstable at the time, so my cultivation base naturally dropped from the God of Creation stage to the Tao Integration Pinnacle stage. Tears began to flow from Patriarch Zhu Yin's eyes as he spoke. Unlin didn't think that this almost invincible being would have such troubles and setbacks. This had to be the most earth-shattering story of heartbreak he had ever heard. Because of Zhu Yin's heartbreak, an entire world was destroyed. This was far too terrifying. Tina tapped her chin with a slender finger and murmured to herself, even though it's quite absurd, it does make a lot of sense. In the world created by the God of creation, it is the heavens. However, Li Yin was Zhu Yin's heaven, and everything that Zhu Yin had created in the glazed Yellow Springs world was related to Li Yin. Hence, Li Yin abandoned him, and his world collapsed. This is a chain reaction caused by the broken connection between the two. This chain reaction is very likely to have devastating consequences. The little fairy's eyes lit up as if she had understood something. She had obviously used Zhu Yin as a negative example to learn from her mistake. Ding Xiaoru obviously noticed this as well, and he couldn't help but feel even more stifled. He, Patriarch Zhu Yin, had dominated the entire continent and had never encountered a situation where he was being used as a negative example by a junior. However, he, who was deeply immersed in his heartbreak, did not want to fuss over this kind of thing. Instead, he continued, I had initially thought that when I walked out of this heartbreak, I would be able to raise my cultivation level again and return to the Genesis tier. However, several hundred years have passed since that incident, and I still haven't been able to walk out of it. That's right, I can't forget her. Seeing as I can't give up, perhaps reuniting with her is the only way for me to return to the God of Creation stage. This is also my true desire. However, I've tried many methods, but I'm still unable to make Yin fall in love with me again. She has discovered her true feelings and sexual orientation, and she loves women. Ding Xiaoru turned toward Enlin and the others with a pained and conflicted expression on his face, but there was a pleading and expectant look in his eyes. What do you think I should do? Enlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina roughly understood what was going on. Ding Xiaoru was asking Enlin and the others to help Li Yin become straight again. No wonder he was willing to offer an underworld Dao flower that was close to the Dao integration stage. As long as it could help him return to the God of Creation stage, it was definitely worth it. Of course, I have to find a way to make her fall in love with me again without harming her or forcing her to do so. Ding Xiaoru was confident that as long as Yin was interested in a man, then he would definitely be the one she loved. The only mistake was that Li Yin had been turned gay by Chang Yi. Even now, she was still looking up at the moon in the sky and silently cheering on Chang Yi for her Dao integration stage battle. It could be said that she had completely fallen into depravity. All right, I'll accept this mission. Enlin patted his chest with a firm expression. Su Xiaolan and Tina were also full of fighting spirit and eagerness. A hint of anticipation appeared on Ding Xiaoru's face upon seeing Enlin's quick response. I'll leave Yin to you then. If you encounter any problems during the execution of this mission, I'll do my best to help. He still had a lot of trust and anticipation in Enlin. Enlin was always able to make the impossible possible, and he was also very adept at doing things that were out of the ordinary. Perhaps he really would be able to turn a completely gay woman straight. Enlin spoke. I need you to take us to her as a friend. Ding Xiaoru nodded. Come with me. Amidst a sea of flowers that was emitting white light. Heaven and earth were completely dark and devoid of light, and only the flowers were swaying in the wind like stars in the sky. A young woman in a colorful dress sat on a rock, swinging her well-proportioned legs from side to side as she looked up into the dark sky. No one knew what she was thinking about. Yin, Ding Xiaoru called out. Didn't I tell you? Don't bother me. The young woman turned around with furrowed brows as she looked at Ding Xiaoru. Her eyes were as translucent as if they were made of glass. I didn't want you to be bored waiting for Chang Yi here, so I brought a few friends to chat with. I'm sure you'll be interested. Ding Xiaoru's expression was extremely dark, but he still maintained a gentle smile. Ding Xiaoru, don't keep bringing random people to bother me. If you keep this up, I'm going to hide in a place where even you don't know where I am. Li Yin flared up with rage. It was quite clear that Ding Xiaoru had found a lot of relationship teachers to guide her. However, in the next instant, Enlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina had already emerged from behind Ding Xiaoru with friendly smiles on their faces. Enlin was just about to say something. However, Li Yin's eyes abruptly widened, as if she had seen something that she was extremely fond of. She immediately rushed toward Enlin and instantly grabbed onto Enlin's hand with both of her slender hands. She raised her head with excitement in her eyes. It's you. You're Enlin. You really are Enlin. There was no need to mention how excited and happy he was. Ding Xiaoru. Su Xiaolan. Chapter 1607. Just as Enlin was at a complete loss, Li Yin spoke again. You're good friends with Big Sister Chang Yi, right? Hurry up and tell me about Big Sister Chang Yi. Enlin's lips twitched. Li Yin was so excited just because he was Chang Yi's friend? This was a little difficult to deal with. He had actually sunk so deep, Ding Xiaoru heaved a faint sigh of relief. Thank God he was overthinking things. Enlin didn't have any special relationship with Li Yin. Enlin followed Li Yin to a large rock and sat down beside it. Li Yin's eyes were extremely bright as she looked at Enlin with curiosity in her eyes. A joyful smile appeared on her face, and she was as pure as a teenage girl's. The more she was like this, the more Enlin felt like this was an extremely difficult mission. It was quite clear that Li Yin was only being so nice to him because of Chang Yi. As for Ding Xiaoru, He had already been given the cold shoulder. By the way, congratulations on successfully destroying the southern heavenly gate, Li Yin said with a dainty smile on her face. Anlin looked at the woman beside him. Her lips were red and her teeth were pearly. She was like a real human girl. It looked like ghosts really weren't much different from humans after becoming immortals. He felt like this was a very good opportunity to change the topic. Let me tell you, the first person I should thank for destroying the southern heavenly gate is the woman beside me. Anlin pointed at Su Xiaolan. The divine phoenix maiden helped you a lot? Li Yin asked. Anlin nodded with a firm expression. Do you know what power I relied on to win that extremely difficult and almost impossible battle? What power? Li Yin's curiosity was piqued. The power of love. Anlin replied with a serious expression. Ding Xiaoru. Li Yin rolled her eyes. Su Xiaolan maintained a stiff smile on her face. Anlin ignored Li Yin's roll of her eyes and spoke with a serious expression. Don't underestimate the power of love. Xiaolan and I have great rapport in battle, and our cooperation has produced an effect that is greater than two. Not only that, but every time I was beaten to the brink of death by my enemies, I couldn't lose. I couldn't let Xiaolan die here. My emotions transformed into limitless power, and I finally defeated my enemies. All of this is the power of love. Patriarch Zhu Yin was extremely excited. He actually managed to get it back. Furthermore, his analysis was reasonable. Even he almost believed it. Nothing was more convincing than one's own heaven-defying battle record. Anlin's trick was obviously very successful. Sure enough, Li Yin nodded in agreement. Just when Ding Xiaoru thought that things were progressing, a yearning expression appeared on Li Yin's face as she said with a smile, "The power of true love is indeed mighty. I believe that my love with Big Sister Chang Yi can also create countless miracles." Anlin's jaw dropped. Ding Xiaoru felt as if his heart had been stabbed by a sword. Why did it seem like she had become even more determined? Anlin wasn't going to allow this to happen, and he continued, "Only heterosexual love can create miracles. Same-sex love is destined to fail." Why do you say that? Li Yin glared at Anlin with a stern expression. A faint smile appeared on Anlin's face at the sight of her defiant expression. Have you ever seen a heterosexual mighty figure stay together for a very long time? Li Yin's expression faltered slightly upon hearing this. There really wasn't a single heterosexual mighty figure on the entire Tai Chu continent who had a heterosexual Dao partner. Big Sister Chang Yi and I can be the first couple. Li Yin's heart wavered slightly before she suddenly made up her mind again. Anlin heaved a faint sigh in his heart. It really wasn't that simple. He shook his head as he continued, as the saying goes, the harmony of yin and yang is the great Tao of heaven and earth. All right, there's no need to tell me that. I've heard it so many times already. Li Yin waved her hands before turning to Ding Xiaoru with a faint smile on her face. You've really put a lot of thought into this. Even sect leader Anlin, the most renowned figure on the entire Tai Chu continent, was convinced by you? Awkward expressions appeared on both Anlin and Ding Xiaoru's faces. They didn't think that their true intentions would be seen through by Li Yin so quickly. Anlin decided to just go with the flow. Seeing as that's the case, I won't hide anything from you. I'll tell you the truth, Chang Yi already has someone in her heart. As soon as he said that, everyone's expression changed again. No. I don't believe you. Li Yin's enraged and determined voice sounded. 300 years ago we were still in a good relationship. She then became busy with her Dao integration stage battle, so how could she have a change of heart so quickly? Li Yin glowered at Anlin with an enraged expression. Don't look down on my love for Chang Yi. You have no right to spout nonsense about our love for each other. I'll show you something, and you'll know whether I'm spouting nonsense or not. Anlin wasn't enraged, and he pulled out a photographic crystal from his storage ring before injecting his vital energy into it to play a series of images. Under the Moon Palace, beside the moon osmanthus tree, two women in palatial dresses were leaning against each other. One of them was an exquisitely beautiful young woman. The other was also exquisitely beautiful, but her features were still a little immature. The two of them looked at each other with faint smiles on their faces. Falling flower petals and flowery smiles were like the most beautiful images between heaven and earth. Their beauty could mesmerize all living beings. Lien's body trembled as she stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before her eyes. How could this be? Impossible. How could Big Sister Chang-yi be with her? The two women on the screen were none other than Celestial Immortal Chang-yi and Celestial Immortal Shi-yu. When others saw this scene, they might think that they were two sisters who had a very good relationship. However, Lien was different. She could read the emotions hidden in Chang-yi and Shi-yu's eyes, and these emotions were so similar to the emotions she had felt when she had looked into Chang-yi's eyes. Those were the eyes of a lover. Lien silently looked at the date on the photographic crystal. This was what had happened after Chang-yi left her over 100 years ago. So, did that mean that Chang-yi had already fallen in love with someone else? Why did Big Sister Chang-yi fall in love with someone else? Why did Big Sister Chang-yi abandon me? Didn't we say that we were going to be together forever? Before she knew it, tears were already streaming down her face. She seemed to have received a massive emotional blow, and she was shaking her head incessantly, clearly unable to accept this reality. She really wished that this was a nightmare that she could wake up from. However, Unlin struck while the iron was hot with a cold smile. You think same-sex love is pure love? What a joke. That's just your arrogant way of thinking. The person Chang-yi has always loved has been Celestial Immortal Shi-yu. You're just a pitiful girl who's been toyed with. Think about it, has she ever come to see you during these past few centuries? You're just a one-night stand that she had. Look at who has been by your side for hundreds of years, never abandoning you. Unlin's words were like a clap of thunder, and Lien was instantly rooted to the spot. There were still tears shimmering in her eyes, and she turned to look at the purple-robed man behind her, only to be greeted by his warm and gentle gaze. Chapter 1608. Lien's heart jolted as she stared blankly at the man before her. Unlin stood off to the side and continued, The feeling of being betrayed is very painful, isn't it? Look at who was the one who stayed by your side to protect you and give you the warmest care, even after experiencing the despair of being betrayed and the destruction of the entire world. Being together for a long time is a form of deep affection. It's been a few hundred years. Do you know how he survived? He had already fallen to the lowest point of his life, but the person he cared about the most was you. What about in comparison to Chang-yi? She would have found someone else a long time ago. Don't be fooled by Chang-yi's looks. She's a piece of trash. You need to follow your heart and find your true love. Think about it, what would you do if Ding Xiaoru left you? And Lin's barrage of words struck Lien's heart with devastating force. No, it's not like that. Lien's eyes glazed over, and she clasped her head in her hands before suddenly turning and running toward a nearby house, where she slammed the door shut with a loud bang. Ding Xiaoru yelled with a pained expression. Let her have some peace and quiet. For her to be able to experience such a strong emotional upheaval, it's clear that we're already halfway there. Now we'll have to see if she can come around and return to your side. Unlin clasped his hands behind his back as he spoke in an indifferent voice. Ding Xiaoru wasn't an idiot, and he naturally understood this. For some reason, tears welled up in his eyes at the sight of the white-robed man standing beside him, and he felt as if he had become a little taller. Thank you very much, Mr. Unlin. I've never seen Lien look at me like that before, and I finally see hope in being with her again. Ding Xiaoru spoke with a grateful expression. Unlin snapped, What are you still standing there for? Ding Xiaoru faltered slightly upon hearing this. Hurry up and warm up your Unlin chuckled. Ding Xiaoru came to a sudden realization. When a woman suffered a huge blow, her psychological defense was the weakest. At that time, he must seize the time to give her support and warmth. Patriarch Zhu Yin ran toward the cabin in a panicked manner, completely behaving like a paramount god of the ghost race. Enlin was feeling a little dazed upon seeing this. Enlin stowed the photo away with a content expression. At this time, Su Xiaolan walked over with light step. The light from the white sea of flowers illuminated her face, making it look as bright and moving as the moon. Enlin, why do you have that kind of photo? The woman asked with a relaxed expression. Enlin's heart jolted upon hearing this, but he also wore a relaxed expression as he said, "Haha, this is a photo that you two gave me during the Moon Festival." She said that she took it on a whim. I've been casually tossing it into my storage ring ever since I took it. I've never looked at it. I only had a vague impression of it. Who would have thought that it would be able to produce such a miraculous effect? Su Xiaolan nodded in agreement upon hearing this. This was no longer just a miraculous effect. This was the equivalent of a nuclear bomb. It could be said that if it weren't for the photo, there was no way they would have been able to break through Li Yin's emotional barrier. It was exactly because of the photographic crystal that Li Yin's faith was shattered. There was no need to force Li Yin to become straight. From a different perspective, as long as Li Yin was betrayed by the most perfect woman in the world, the woman she loved the most, she would naturally become straight again. Su Xiaolan cocked her head to the side with a hint of a smile on her face. But that's a photo of Chang Yi and Su Qianyun looking at each other passionately. Why would you two give that kind of photo to you? It just doesn't feel right. Enlin's lips twitched upon hearing this. Su Xiaolan was extremely intelligent, so she wasn't that easy to fool. However, he couldn't tell her the truth that he had exchanged a high-rank spirit pill with you two for this photo, could he? At the time, he only wanted to get a photo to satisfy his cravings. Think about it, the number one beauty of the Kingdom of the Nine States and the number one beauty of the United University of Cultivation looking at each other under the moonlight. Just thinking about it made him excited. Who wouldn't be interested after hearing this? But if he were to tell Su Xiaolan the truth? Enlin racked his brain for a moment before a thought occurred to him, and he heaved a forlorn sigh. Sigh. You should have noticed something from that photo, right? I'm doing this for Su Qianyun's own good. I asked you two to take a photo of it before sending it to Su Xian so he could take precautions. After all, I don't want Su Qianyun to be dumped by that B***tch Chang Yi. It's a pity that Su Xian didn't believe me. He even returned the photos untouched. Enlin said with a pained expression on his face. Su Xiaolan thought about this for a moment and felt like it made sense. To be honest, so many things had happened one after another, and her mind was in a complete mess. Chang Yi had stolen Li Yin's love and turned Li Yin gay. Li Yin had cuckolded Ding Xiaoru, and Ding Xiaoru's cultivation base plummeted. Now Chang Yi had cuckolded Li Yin, and they were even together with Su Qianyun. Her impression of Su Qianyun was clearly not a lesbian. I've been kept in the dark for over 100 years? My God! One thing after another that no one would believe was happening right before Su Xiaolan's eyes, and she felt like her head was spinning and her entire body was in a terrible state. Tina, on the other hand, was relatively calm and collected. She accepted new things very quickly. After all, she was a goddess of creation, so she always had a tolerant and compassionate heart. Weren't they just lesbians? She was already used to such occurrences in the divine mirror world. Who would have thought that we would be able to complete this mission so smoothly? It wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. Tina spun around in midair with elation in her eyes. It's all because of the power of my photo, Enlin said with a buoyant smile. Su Xiaolan nodded in agreement. We wouldn't have been able to complete this mission if we had done it any other way. However, there's only one such photo in this entire world. In other words, we just so happened to stumble upon all of this. This is our opportunity. I'm the one who contributed the most to this mission. No objections, right? Anlin spoke with a smug expression. Su Xiaolan and Tina both exclaimed in unison, but they didn't express any objections. He just wanted to take the underworld Dao flower, right? Anlin immediately knew what Anlin was going to do. They didn't say anything. One of them couldn't be bothered, while the other felt like their master was the most powerful, so they should just let him have his way. After a while, Ding Xiaoru made his way out again. There was a mix of joy and sorrow on his face. Anlin and Su Xiaolan immediately went over to inquire about the situation. Thankfully, she didn't reject my kind intentions. I think it must be because of what you did, Mr. Anlin, that she was able to see her emotions again, right? However, she didn't express any clear intentions. She only said that she wanted to calm down a bit more. Ding Xiaoru spoke with a wry smile. Anlin was extremely excited. That means we have a chance. Let's do it. We're just one step away, Xiaolan said with a smile. Let's go provoke her. Anlin suggested. Ding Xiaoru's interest was piqued. How? Anlin replied excitedly. Xiaolan and I will go flaunt our love. Chapter 1609. Patriarch Zhu Yin was given a fright. You're flaunting your love to my Dao partner? Not your Dao partner, it's your former Dao partner, Anlin corrected. That was quite a heart-wrenching response. Patriarch Zhu Yin finally nodded with difficulty and agreed to Anlin's plan. Even though it was immoral to flaunt their love in front of Li Yin's face, it would be a good thing if he could awaken Li Yin's love for him. Anlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina constructed a random house before settling down. Patriarch Zhu Yin also had a house nearby, but Anlin encouraged him to move it closer to Li Yin's house. Ding Xiaoru thought about it for a moment before constructing a small house next to Li Yin's house. Patriarch Zhu Yin, who struck fear into the hearts of the entire continent, continued to play the role of a kind-hearted man, consoling the heartbroken Li Yin in the hopes that he could help her recover. Everyone's residence seemed to have been decided just like that. Li Yin knew that Anlin and the others wouldn't leave, and she didn't want to see Anlin again, so she remained in the house, thinking that they wouldn't meet again. However, she soon discovered that she was far too naive. The aroma of stir-fried meat wafted into the room with a lethal aroma. It was an indescribable aroma. It was far too delicious, far too lethal. Even though she was trying her best to restrain herself, her legs still failed her and began to move on their own. She opened the door and was greeted by the sight of Anlin cooking outside with Su Xiaolan wiping the sweat off his brow in a thoughtful manner. Both of them appeared to be very happy and harmonious. Gulp. Li Yin swallowed involuntarily. An imperceptible smile appeared on Anlin's face. The chef god of the celestial court was cooking in person with a frying pan. How could he not seduce a little vixen like her? Seeing as he had already seduced her, he would just have to watch from the sidelines. Sure enough, Li Yin couldn't bring herself to beg for food. Thus, she looked on as the two of them fed each other food. What a lovey-dovey scene! The young girl was almost forced to tears. Not only was it not enough to torture her with delicious food, but he even stuffed warm dog food into her mouth. Was there any humanity left? At this moment, a man suddenly walked out from behind her. Yin, do you want some? How about I cook for you? My cooking skills are also very good, Ding Xiaoru said with a gentle expression. Humph. Li Yin harumphed coldly before ducking back into her room. Ding Xiaoru was not disappointed. Instead, he smiled gently. During the next few days, Anlin and Su Xiaolan bombarded Li Yin with food and dog food, and Li Yin was about to go insane. She almost considered moving away. But when he thought about it carefully, wasn't moving the same as admitting defeat? She was a little unconvinced. Furthermore, for some reason, she gradually came to a realization after being stimulated over and over again. It was as if her dusty heart was being wiped clean over and over again, and it gradually became clearer. Time flew by. One day, Li Yin walked out of her room to get some fresh air and arrived at a boundless sea of flowers. She wanted to look up at the sky and yearn for Chang'e, but she then caught sight of Enlin and Su Xiaolan sitting on a rock outside the door. They were leaning against each other and looking out at the sea of flowers, chatting and laughing, and they appeared to be extremely blissful. Humph! Chang Yi is such a heartless person. Also, why are Enlin and the others still here? It's been a few days already, are they still going to fight me? Li Yin pouted as she looked at Ding Xiaoru. They like this sea of flowers and said they want to stay for a few more days. I can't control them. Ding Xiaoru shrugged with a resigned expression. Li Yin was completely speechless. She felt like her wound had been torn open again as she looked at the lovey-dovey couple, and her heart throbbed with pain. And Lin's words seemed to be reverberating in her ears again. You're just a pitiful B***** who's been toyed with. Think about it, has she ever come to see you during the past few centuries? You're just a one-night stand that she had. His words were like a long sword that pierced deep into her heart, making her feel as if she were suffocating. Chang Yi was going to progress to the Dao integration stage, and Li Yin was waiting for her. In fact, she had prayed for her for several centuries and defended her for several centuries. However, Chang Yi had suddenly found a new lover, and apparently, she was going to pass the position of Moon Palace mistress to her new lover. Was this how Chang Yi was repaying her for her love? Tears welled up in Li Yin's eyes again. At this moment, a tissue appeared before her. Li Yin's expression faltered slightly, and she looked up at the man before her. A smile appeared on the man's face. I can't hug you as your Dao partner when you're sad, but I can still hand you a tissue. Li Yin's heart trembled slightly, and she accepted the tissue before wiping away her tears. Who told you to mind your own business? Your business is not my business, Ding Xiaoru replied with a serious expression. Li Yin fell silent. She finally spoke after a while. Ding Xiaoru, I betrayed you and caused your cultivation base to drop. You're the most revered being in the ghost tribe, so can you please be a little more stubborn? She raised her head, and tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at the man's gentle features. Hit me. Why didn't you hit a woman like me who cheated on you? Why did you hold back? Why did you beg me to make up with you? I didn't hold back. I'm not angry. As long as you're willing to come back, I'll forgive you. Ding Xiaoru replied with a serious expression. On a nearby rock, Tina snuck a peek at the two of them, and what they were saying was completely shattering her worldview. Ding Xiaoru. Li Yin gritted her teeth, and tears began to flow from her eyes again. I can be a slut, but why are you doing the same? You don't even dare to touch me. Are you still a man? Slap. An earth-shattering slap erupted. Ding Xiaoru slapped Li Yin across the face like a bolt of lightning, sending her flying for over 10 kilometers. Li Yin threw up a mouthful of blood as she flew through the air, and she only stopped after crashing through a tall mountain. Tina's mouth gaped open. Enlin and Su Xiaolan, who were in the middle of their public display of affection, suddenly stopped as they stared at the scenes unfolding behind them with dumbstruck expressions, and they drew a sharp intake of breath. Holy F***ck. What was going on? Why were they fighting? She clearly wasn't expecting him to actually hit her, was she? Was Ding Xiaoru trying to slap Li Yin to death? What a vendetta! This mission was probably going to fail, wasn't it? A dazzling streak of light flew through the air from the shattered mountain toward Ding Xiaoru. The young woman in the colorful dress pounced onto Ding Xiaoru's body like a baby swallow and began to pound his chest. You baddie! I told you to hit me, but you hit me so hard! Her left cheek had been slapped swollen, and there was still blood trickling down the corner of her lips. Ding Xiaoru held Li Yin tightly in his arms as he spoke in a gentle voice. All of our past grievances have been resolved in that one slap. Let's start over now, all right? The young woman in his arms shuddered slightly. Ding Xiaoru hugged her even tighter upon seeing this. Li Yin nodded with tears streaming down her face. Tina's eyes lit up with a thoughtful expression as she looked on at the scenes unfolding before her. Enlin and Su Xiaolan drew another sharp intake of breath. How was that possible? Chapter 16:10. Anlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina didn't know what kind of emotional journey the two of them had been through. This was just like how they couldn't understand why Ding Xiaoru's cultivation base would plummet after falling out of love. Without their avatars, they wouldn't be able to see what Ding Xiaoru was seeing, nor would they be able to accurately understand what he was feeling. Boom! All of a sudden, heaven and earth tremored violently. Boundless waves of vital energy surged toward Ding Xiaoru in a frenzy. Divine lightning surged and roared in the heavens, exuding paramount lightning might. The purple-robed man and the woman in a colorful dress embraced one another tightly, and they became the center of the storm. Such terrifying energy fluctuations! Su Xiaolan stumbled back in retreat with shock on her face. Ding Xiaoru is going to return to the God of Creation stage. Anlin was extremely excited. Tina's eyes also lit up as she stared intently at Patriarch Zhu Yin to observe how he was going to return to the God of Creation stage. Witnessing this process up close was extremely beneficial to her. Divine lightning surged for 100,000 kilometers in the heavens, and bolts of black and purple lightning tore through space, tearing open a series of ghastly spatial rifts. That's chaotic divine lightning. It's a type of lightning that exists in chaos and transcends beyond heaven and earth. An expression of shock and astonishment appeared on Anlin's face, and he retreated even further with Su Xiaolan in case they were accidentally injured. Even though Patriarch Zhu Yin was returning to the God of Creation stage rather than breaking through to the God of Creation stage, the tribulation of heaven and earth that he had triggered was still extremely terrifying. The destructive energy in the surroundings was approaching, and the chaotic divine lightning was also baring its fangs in the clouds, preparing to completely destroy the weakened paramount god of the ghost tribe. This was a doomsday-like scene. Every single bolt of chaotic divine lightning was imbued with the power to destroy the world. Patriarch Zhu Yin chortled with glee as he looked at the oncoming power, and he stepped forward before gently sweeping a sleeve through the air. Heaven-splitting technique. Boundless chaotic power instantly surged forth in a frenzy before him. This was an indescribable power, as if it were a power from the primordial era before heaven and earth had been created. As soon as it appeared, heaven and earth began to tremor violently, as if it had received an extremely powerful stimulus. The chaotic divine lightning in the sky above was already crashing down upon Patriarch Zhu Yin, but it was all absorbed by his chaotic power and pulverized into nothingness. Soon, Patriarch Zhu Yin's invisible and colorless power underwent a sudden change. All of a sudden, it was as if the power of nothingness had gained relativity and multiplicity. One yin and one yang, one heavy and one clear. Those with pure yang energy floated up, while those with heavy yin energy sunk down. Heaven and earth were redrawn. Suddenly, a completely different world projection appeared in the purple-robed man's eyes. His supreme divinity soared into the universe and shattered all the chaotic divine thunder in the sky. Anlin, Su Xiaolan, and the others felt a supreme divinity. It was as if they were facing a real god, a god that had transcended everything and was independent of the three realms. So this is Heaven Splitter? Tina murmured to herself. That's way too terrifying. This kind of power has already transcended beyond my comprehension. Su Xiaolan took a deep breath, but her eyes were extremely bright. Anlin also seemed to have sensed something, and he observed everything in silence. Patriarch Zhu Yin clenched his hand toward the heavens, and his hand transformed into billions of ghostly spirits. A cold voice that was imbued with supreme divine might erupted throughout heaven and earth like a bell of the great Tao. The heavenly Tao is nothing to me, and I am the sole ruler of the land of the dead. Countless Yin spirits and ghostly generals throughout the entire opposite shore realm looked up into the heavens at the same time as they unleashed the power within their bodies. Billions of dead spirits played the tune of death at the same time. The peaceful and serene tune of the dead reverberated throughout the opposite shore realm. Bam! The chaotic divine lightning, within a radius of 50,000 kilometers, instantly disappeared. Patriarch Zhu Yin closed his eyes, and the heaven and earth that had been carved out from chaos shot into his glabella like a streak of light. At the same time, a world on the other side of the opposite shore was quickly being restored and mended. He stood there quietly with his eyes closed. He did not move or speak, just like a wooden pillar. Li Yin, Enlin, and the others all knew what to do and didn't disturb him. Instead, they silently stood guard off to the side. Peace and quiet had returned to this place, but the entire opposite shore realm was in an uproar. Patriarch Zhu Yin's divine mantra of "The heavenly Tao is nothing to me, and I am the sole ruler of the land of the dead," spread throughout the entire opposite shore realm like a divine decree, and the ghost tribe cultivators were completely unable to muster up any resistance. It was as if they were living a peaceful life, only to suddenly hear the words, "I am number one in the world." How could they not explode? All of the ghost tribe cultivators in the opposite shore realm were scared ***, but they couldn't muster up any resistance. All they could do was try to guess the identity of the living being who had just uttered those words, and most of them had guessed who it was. After all, aside from the paramount god of the ghost tribe, Patriarch Zhu Yin, no one else would dare to say something like that. Patriarch Zhu Yin's presence spread like wildfire among the ghost tribe cultivators. At the same time, the gods of creation who stood at the pinnacle of the Tai Chu continent all opened their eyes with different expressions on their faces. Some were smiling, some were sad, and some couldn't even be bothered to pay attention to Patriarch Zhu Yin. They didn't pay much attention to mundane matters. Even though Patriarch Zhu Yin's cultivation base had regressed, they had already anticipated this. It was just that it had happened earlier than they had anticipated. 3 days later, Patriarch Zhu Yin opened his eyes. His aura had been completely withdrawn, and he appeared just as ordinary and mundane as when they had first met. After returning to the God of Creation stage, a joyful smile appeared on his face. "Mr. Enlin, Ms. Su Xiaolan, Ms. Tina, thank you very much for your help." The paramount god of the ghost tribe, who had been cursing the heavens and earth just a few days ago, had regained his full strength, and there was not a single hint of arrogance on his face as he extended a respectful ghost tribe salute to Enlin and the others. Enlin and Su Xiaolan were extremely flattered. Tina was even more embarrassed. She had been spectating the entire time, so she had to thank Enlin and Su Xiaolan, who had been doing their best to feed Li Yin with their public displays of affection. "There's no need to thank me, Ms. Ding Xiaoru. Congratulations on returning to the God of Creation stage." Enlin faltered slightly before replying with a smile. At the same time, he also thought to himself, "You've already recovered your God of Creation stage power, so shouldn't we talk about your reward?" Ding Xiaoru immediately smiled, as if he could read Enlin's mind. "Ms. Enlin, seeing as you've helped me get Li Yin back, I will naturally fulfill my promise." "Promise? What promise?" Li Yin held onto Ding Xiaoru's hand with a curious expression. "I promised them that if they could help me get my lover back, I would give them the underworld Dao flower as a thank-you gift," Ding Xiaoru replied. Li Yin clasped a hand over her chest with a pained expression. "You should have said that earlier. If you told me that you would give me the underworld Dao flower, I would have most likely already been with you." Even though she said that, she didn't raise any objections. She knew that if it weren't for the efforts of Enlin and the others, there was no way that she would have been able to recognize herself and return to Ding Xiaoru's side so quickly. Ding Xiaoru smiled before turning to Enlin and the others. "Come with me." Everyone arrived at the Sea of Flowers again. Enlin was a little excited. He could finally pluck flowers, Chapter 16:11. The underworld Dao flower swayed from side to side with the wind. A group of flirtatious sluts were gorgeously dressed, releasing dazzling brilliance and stealing its limelight. However, it didn't want to compete with these flowers. After all, it couldn't compete with them anyway, so it could only play the role of a weirdo. The petals were like mushrooms clustered together, and there were all kinds of vivid expressions on them. Right at this moment, a few people flew over from the distance. "Mr. Enlin, you can tame this underworld Dao flower and take it away," Ding Xiaoru said. A dejected expression appeared on the flower's face, and all 99 mushroom images suddenly appeared on its face, as if it were begging Ding Xiaoru to change his mind. Ding Xiaoru had already fallen in love, and he had no time to care about the feelings of a mere flower. He immediately terminated the beast pet contract in a very violent manner before latching onto Li Yin's hand and beginning to flirt with her. Having lost its beast pet contract connection, the underworld Dao flower was even more heartbroken at the sight of this and almost burst into tears. Enlin made his way over to the flower with a wide smile on his face. "My little flower, come with me, Tui." The underworld Dao flower spat another mouthful of saliva onto Enlin's face. Enlin licked the saliva with his tongue. "So sweet." Ding Xiaoru, Li Yin. The underworld Dao flower's saliva was its nectar, and it was a high-rank spirit-rank liquid. It was far more valuable than the saliva of a true dragon or ambergris, so Enlin didn't want to waste it. The underworld Dao flower trembled with rage, but it couldn't do anything. "Come with me and acknowledge me as your master, and I'll make sure you live a lavish life." Enlin made a solemn vow. The underworld Dao flower was completely disdainful. Some of its petals pouted arrogantly while others rolled their eyes, clearly looking down on Enlin. Enlin looked at the flower with a curious expression. "You've already attained Dao, so why can't you speak?" The underworld Dao flower chuckled coldly. "Is it because you're uncultured?" Enlin asked. "Tui." The underworld Dao flower spat with rage. "So sweet." Enlin was elated. Ding Xiaoru and Su Xiaolan were speechless. "That's enough, Enlin. If it doesn't want to, we'll just take it back by force and slowly train it." Su Xiaolan couldn't stand it anymore and took the initiative to speak up. Enlin's eyes lit up with excitement and he asked, "Like how you trained little Huang?" A blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's jade-white face, and she whispered, "There's an outsider here. Why did you speak so loudly?" "It's not like it's an ability to be proud of," Enlin was elated. If this wasn't something to be proud of, then what was? He wanted to take this opportunity to learn more from Xiao Lan and master this skill. The underworld Dao flower was instantly enraged upon hearing Xiaolan's words. "Bah!" It spat another mouthful of saliva at Su Xiaolan's face. F***ck off. Su Xiaolan's expression darkened as she abruptly swatted the nectar away with her hand. Holy flames materialized in her palm, and the underworld Dao flower was flattened into the ground. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The underworld Dao flower howled with anguish. All 99 flower petals had tears streaming down their faces. "I can't be bothered with you, but you're trying to take advantage of me? Do you want to die?" Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed as her killing intent froze the space around her. The underworld Dao flower had pissed itself in fear, and its nectar had spilled all over the ground. Enlin, Ding Xiaoru, and Li Yin were all astonished as they stared at the woman before them with fear in their eyes. They all knew that Su Xiaolan was serious, and the killing intent emanating from her body was also real. She really was getting impatient and wanted to destroy the underworld Dao flower. The underworld Dao flower had always been pampered and spoiled, and even the paramount god of the ghost tribe, Patriarch Zhu Yin, had to take good care of it. It had lived like a proud princess and had never encountered a situation like this before. That's right, this was the first time in its entire life that it had ever felt such a strong sense of impending death. The underworld Dao flower didn't dare to do anything and could only tremble uncontrollably as it was pinned to the ground by Su Xiaolan. "Apologize," Su Xiaolan said in an indifferent voice. All 99 flower petals of the underworld Dao flower began to weep in unison. Wah boom! The terrifying aura of the vermilion bird descended from the heavens. The aura of a holy beast that transcended beyond the three realms crashed down upon the underworld Tao flower. The woman's cold and menacing voice sounded, "Can't you speak? I told you to apologize." Sorry," a tender and choppy voice sounded. And Lin and Tina were astonished. Not only could this flower create emoticons, but it could also speak? And its voice was quite pleasant to listen to. Slap. Su Xiaolan delivered another slap. "I can't hear you. Louder." "I'm sorry," the underworld Tao flower yelled at the top of its lungs. "Who are you apologizing to?" Su Xiaolan asked in a cold voice. "I'm sorry, Su Xiaolan," the underworld Tao flower yelled. "What else?" Su Xiaolan's slap was getting more and more forceful. "I'm sorry, Lin. I'm sorry, Tina. I'm sorry, Ding Xiaoru. I'm sorry, Li Yin," the underworld Tao flower yelled with tears streaming down its face. Gasp! Everyone drew a sharp intake of breath upon hearing this. "All right, Lin, hurry up and establish the beast pet contract." Su Xiaolan clapped her little hands together as she turned to Lin with a "I've done it," and "it's very simple" expression on her face. "Lin, Ding Xiaoru, can someone tell me what just happened? What the hell did the underworld Tao flower go through just now?" He had to strike while the iron was hot. Lin would be an idiot if he didn't seize this opportunity. He immediately set up a spell formation before releasing a drop of blood essence toward the underworld Tao flower. "Don't resist. Accept this drop of blood essence," he said in a gentle voice. An expression of resistance appeared on the underworld Tao flower's face. Su Xiaolan's expression darkened upon seeing this. "If you resist Lin, then I'll be your master." The underworld Tao flower shuddered before immediately absorbing the drop of blood essence, as if it were afraid that Su Xiaolan would change her mind. So fragrant! Lin could sense the faint connection between himself and the underworld Tao flower, and he knew that he had succeeded. He hugged Su Xiaolan with excitement and chortled with glee. "Ha ha! Thank you, Xiaolan. You're the best. This flower is a lot easier to tame than Little Huang. I still have a lot of methods that I haven't used yet." Su Xiaolan was a little disappointed. She hadn't even used her full strength yet, and the underworld Tao flower had already given in. She still had more tricks up her sleeve. The underworld Tao flower had always been protected, and it shuddered upon hearing this. It suddenly felt like it was extremely fortunate that it had followed a master who was a little perverted, but not too fierce. Lin stroked the underworld Tao flower with a smile. "I'll give you a name. You're a flower that has attained enlightenment on your own, and you've received great fortune from heaven and earth. You're situated in the most dangerous place for undead creatures, and you're the most unique existence in the Permethal land. You can be said to be the emperor of flowers." The underworld Tao flower puffed out its chest with pride. "How about, I call you Little Mushroom?" Lin suggested. The underworld Tao flower. Chapter 1612. Little Mushroom? What the hell? The underworld Tao flower was completely dumbstruck. What did Lin's compliment just then have to do with the name Little Mushroom? Not only the underworld Tao flower, but even Ding Xiaoru and Li Yin were also dumbstruck. Giant Lin's naming skills have improved. In the past, he only used to use 2 words, but now he's using 3 words. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but burst into laughter. The underworld Tao flower stared blankly at Lin. All 99 of its petals were completely dumbstruck, as if to say, "Are you serious?" Lin stroked the petals with a doting smile. "Little Mushroom, you're going to be called Little Mushroom from now on. It's so adorable and pleasing to the eye." Boom! The underworld Tao flower felt as if it had been struck by lightning, and it was rooted to the spot before a look of utter despair appeared on its face. "I'm the underworld Tao flower that lives in the opposite shore realm, and I'm the emperor of all flowers, yet I have to use a name like Little Mushroom?" The underworld Tao flower really wanted to spit at Lin. However, when it caught sight of Su Xiaolan, it inexplicably cowered and could only wipe away its tears. If it weren't for the fact that it was wary of Su Xiaolan, it wouldn't have been reduced to this state. "By the way, little mushroom, do you know how to fight?" Anlin asked. The underworld Dao flower faltered slightly before shaking its head and looking at Anlin with a cold expression. Anlin nodded upon hearing this. He wasn't expecting a flower that only knew how to spit saliva to fight. "How about this? Go photosynthesize in Little Na's spatial pokeball first, and I'll bring you out after Little Lon and I take care of our business," Anlin suggested. The underworld Dao flower faltered again. At this moment, a ball of light had already flown toward it. The ball of light split open, from within which burst forth a dazzling rainbow light, accompanied by an extremely powerful spatial suction force. "No!" The underworld Dao flower suddenly yelled with grief and indignation. "I don't know how to photosynthesize." What? The underworld Dao flower had been sucked into the pokeball. The world suddenly fell silent. Anlin came to a sudden realization, and he clapped his hands together. "That's right. There's no sun in the opposite shore realm, so how are the underworld Dao flowers supposed to survive?" Ding Xiaoru's lips twitched, and he repressed the urge to retort as he patiently explained, "The underworld Dao flower has already attained enlightenment, so there's no need for it to replenish its energy. Heaven and earth will bestow energy upon it." Anlin was astonished. "The heavens are feeding it?" Ding Xiaoru nodded. "However, the infernal Dao flower likes Yin-type energy. If you want to make it more powerful, you can have it absorb more Yin Qi, Death Qi, Hell Qi." Anlin kept this in mind and kept nodding his head. As its master, he had to nurture his pet beast and make it stronger. This was something he had to be responsible for. Give her the Yin energy? Little Na can do it. Tina patted her little chest and adjusted the flow of vital energy within the pokeball before converging all of the Yin-type energy toward the underworld Dao flower. Anlin expressed his gratitude to Ding Xiaoru again. "Thank you for the flower, Senior." Ding Xiaoru also expressed his gratitude to Anlin. "Thank you, Mr. Anlin, for helping me find happiness again." The two of them exchanged pleasantries, as if they regretted not having met sooner. "What are you going to do next, Mr. Anlin? Perhaps I can help you." Ding Xiaoru knew that Anlin and Su Xiaolan definitely hadn't come to the opposite shore realm just to have some fun. Perhaps he could be of some help as well? Anlin suddenly didn't know what to say. Was he supposed to tell the truth? Was he supposed to go beat the crap out of the Dark Spirit King? One had to realize this was Patriarch Zhu Yin's territory. Was Patriarch Zhu Yin going to forgive him like he had forgiven Li Yin? "Could it be that you have some difficulties, Mr. Anlin?" Ding Xiaoru patted his chest upon seeing the conflicted expression on Anlin's face. "Don't worry. Tell me if you have any difficulties, and I'll do my best to help you." To be honest, Anlin had helped him find his lover and return to the God of Creation stage, so he felt like a gift from the underworld Dao flower wasn't enough to express his gratitude. Setting aside their differences, Anlin could be considered a friend now. When a friend encountered a problem, especially in the opposite shore realm, Anlin was more than happy to lend a hand. Are you serious?" Anlin asked after a momentary hesitation. Ding Xiaoru patted his chest. "Why would I lie to you? Tell me. I swear on my name as Patriarch Zhu Yin that I'll do my best to help you, Mr. Anlin, if you encounter any difficulties in the opposite shore realm." "You're the one who said that." Anlin paused momentarily before continuing. "What I want to say is that Xiaolan and I came here to beat the crap out of the Dark Spirit King." Everyone suddenly fell silent. Ding Xiaoru's confident expression stiffened. "What?" Ding Xiaoru's face convulsed. "I want to beat the crap out of the Dark Spirit King," Anlin replied. "Ding Xiaoru, Li Yin, Ding Xiaoru's flesh crawled. "May I ask why Mr. Anlin wants to beat up the Dark Spirit King?" He didn't have many dealings with the Dark Spirit King, but the Dark Spirit King was a Dao integration stage super mighty figure of the opposite shore realm, after all, and it could be said to be the face of the opposite shore realm. Unlin wanted to beat up such a powerful being right in front of a paramount god of the ghost tribe. Wasn't that a slap to the face? Wait, didn't I just encourage Unlin to say this? And I swore on my name as Patriarch Zhu Yin that I'll do my best to help Mr. Unlin encounter any difficulties in the opposite shore realm? Ding Xiaoru wanted to throw up blood upon thinking of this. He had just slapped himself in the face. I just don't like the Dark Spirit King, so I want to beat it up, Unlin replied in a straightforward manner. Ding Xiaoru thought about it for a moment before asking, is it because it joined the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army? Unlin nodded and didn't deny this. Ding Xiaoru massaged his brows with a vexed expression. How about this? We'll just beat it up and teach it a lesson. We won't beat it to death, all right? Unlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina were all astonished upon hearing this. You mean us? Unlin was extremely incredulous. I said I would help you, and I swore on my name as Patriarch Zhu Yin. Am I going to go back on my word? Ding Xiaoru spoke with an aggrieved expression. He was a paramount god of the ghost tribe, and he was going to follow through on his word even if he had to shed tears. How could he go back on his word? Su Xiaolan still felt like this was extremely absurd. They should be thanking the heavens that Patriarch Zhu Yin wasn't going to stop them, but now, he was volunteering to help them? Wasn't this a little too far-fetched? Really? Su Xiaolan couldn't help but reconfirm. Ding Xiaoru waved a hand through the air. I, Zhu Yin, am a man of my word. I also know where the Dark Spirit King is, and I'll take you there right now. Chapter 1613. He was going to lead the way himself? Unlin and Su Xiaolan were astonished again. They were going to the enemy's base to beat up a super mighty figure boss, and the final boss, Patriarch Zhu Yin, was going to lead the way himself? What the hell was going on? This service is way too good. Unlin was overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. It's just SOSO. It's all because Mr. Unlin helped me get Yin back. Ding Xiaoru was a little exhausted. If he could turn back time, he definitely wouldn't have said something like that. However, he had already made a promise, and if he didn't fulfill it, then he would be utterly humiliated. But I have to reiterate, cripple or cripple it, don't kill it by any means. I don't have much to do with it, but I'm in charge of this place. Ding Xiaoru spoke again. There was another important reason why he was going with Unlin and the others, and that was to keep an eye on Unlin and make sure that Unlin didn't kill the Dark Spirit King. Unlin immediately replied, Don't worry, Senior, I just want to beat the crap out of it. If Patriarch Zhu Yin wasn't here, then the Dark Spirit King wouldn't be able to survive. Now that things had come to this, he could only give Patriarch Zhu Yin some face. Ding Xiaoru rose into the air with Li Yin in his arms. Come with me. Unlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina followed behind Ding Xiaoru as they flew toward the northern region of the opposite shore realm. Everyone flew very quickly, and it didn't take them long to cover close to half of the opposite shore realm. Unlin and Ding Xiaoru were chatting idly, and most of the topics were related to the opposite shore realm. As the leader of the opposite shore realm, Ding Xiaoru was the most knowledgeable person on the entire continent. He told Unlin everything he knew, and it was clear that he really did view Unlin as a friend. There are yin and yang in heaven and earth. The opposite shore realm is a realm of extreme yin, which is the opposite of the southern heavenly wing nation's realm of extreme yang. The opposite shore realm is naturally blessed by the laws of the heavenly Tao, which can expel all yang energy, including the light of the sun, and converge yin energy. Ding Xiaoru slowly explained to Unlin. Unlin was quite intrigued, and he would ask a few questions from time to time. By the way, I have a question for you. Unlin suddenly couldn't help but ask. Go ahead. Ding Xiaoru was still as amiable and gentle as ever. May I ask which faction of the ghost tribe you belong to, Senior? Unlin asked uneasily. Ding Xiaoru knew what Unlin wanted to say. Right now, the ghost tribe was divided into the human exterminating faction, the heaven crushing faction, and the neutral faction. Enlin was clearly afraid that he belonged to the human exterminating faction, if it wasn't for the fact that Ding Xiaoru didn't do it. Enlin definitely wouldn't trust a god of creation stage ghost tribe paramount god like him. Ding Xiaoru remained expressionless, and he replied with a smile, "I don't belong to any of the factions." Enlin was dumbstruck. "You're neutral." "No, I'm not even neutral." Ding Xiaoru shook his head. "Are there any other options?" Enlin's lips twitched. Ding Xiaoru's eyes were clear and gentle, but they seemed to be able to pierce through heaven and earth. His aura suddenly became ethereal, as if he were a paramount god that had descended upon this world. The representatives of the heavenly Tao descended upon this world, and a massive war ensued. There are the Annihilation faction that advocates cooperating with the heavenly gods to wipe out the entire human race in order to win the favor of the representatives of the heavenly Tao and convince the heavenly Tao to spare the lives of all other races. There are the heaven-crushing faction that refuses to accept that their fate has been decided by the heavenly Tao. They advocate uniting with the human race to wipe out all of the representatives of the heavenly Tao, and they even want to replace the incomplete heavenly Tao. There are also the heaven-crushing faction that wavers on the fence, and there are also the heaven-mending faction that wants to repair the flaws in the heavenly Tao. There are many choices in this world, but all of them are made on the basis of survival. As for me, I've already transcended beyond this mortal world, so I won't die. Why should I make a mortal choice? Ding Xiaoru looked at Enlin with a faint smile. You won't die. Enlin faltered slightly before asking, the heavenly Tao and the heavenly life god are the two paramount representatives of the heavenly Tao. Ding Xiaoru clasped his hands behind his back. What can those heavenly Tao powers do to me? Even if their powers aren't restricted, as long as I hide in the world I've created, I'm the heavens. I'll kill every foreign heavenly Tao power that comes my way. The domineering manner in which the purple-robed man spoke caused Enlin and Su Xiaolan's hearts to tremble. They were once again struck by the domineering aura of a god of creation. So, this calamity that has affected the entire continent is actually harmless to god of creation stage beings? Su Xiaolan murmured to herself. Ding Xiaoru nodded. The worst-case scenario is that we won't be able to go to the Tai Chu continent. No wonder the other god of creation stage gods on the Tai Chu continent haven't done anything aside from Cyril of the True Demon tribe. Enlin's brows furrowed tightly. Ding Xiaoru waved a hand with a smile. There are still many gods of creation who are concerned about the living beings on this continent. They won't die, but this is their land, and there are countless descendants and brethren living here. Those powerful beings won't just abandon you. However, now is not the best time for them to intervene. If a god of creation interferes, they will oppose the heavenly Tao and face boundless backlash from the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao is extremely sensitive to the actions of god of creation stage gods. When that time comes, they will have no choice but to hide in their own worlds and not dare to set foot on the Tai Chu continent again. This is not the outcome they want, so they have to secure victory with a single strike. Enlin nodded with enlightenment. At the same time, he was a little perplexed. He had always thought that Chun was also a god of creation. After all, he had even used the spotless realm. However, Chun and the heavenly earth god didn't suffer any backlash. Why was he still prancing around as if nothing had happened? Could it be that Chun wasn't a god of creation stage cultivator? Then what cultivation base was he at? Enlin was able to understand the awkward situation that the gods of creation were in through Ding Xiaoru's explanation. At the same time, he also learned about their attitude and their path of retreat. They might not necessarily fight to the death for the Tai Chu continent. This was very unsettling news. No wonder Ding Xiaoru was willing to befriend a representative of the heavenly Tao. He didn't care about the representative of the heavenly Tao at all. Wait. A thought flashed through Enlin's mind, and he said with excitement, You're saying that the gods of creation can resist the heavenly Tao in their own worlds. If the gods of creation transfer the entire human race into their worlds, wouldn't the heavenly Tao be unable to do anything? Chapter 16:14. Ding Xiaoru shook his head with a resigned expression upon hearing this. I said that I can remain immortal because I am the heavens of that world. As for other living beings, even if they escape to my world, they will still suffer backlash from the heavenly Tao, as the heavens I created are on a lower level than the heavenly Tao of the Tai Chu continent. It's like how I created a small, independent box within a big box. The big box can't destroy the small box, which is me, but it can continue to influence the living beings within the small box through its omnipresent power. In other words, I am invincible, but I can't guarantee the safety of the living beings within the world I created. The human race is a race that the heavenly Tao is determined to destroy, so they won't allow the human race to survive in the gods of creation's world. The power of the heavenly Tao will only make them die even faster. Anlin was still a little perplexed. If the heavenly God of life and the heavenly God of heaven decide to wipe out all living beings on this continent, what will happen to Li Yin if she's not a god of creation? Ding Xiaoru smiled. Even though I can't protect all living beings, I can protect Yin with all my might. I don't need your protection. I want to progress to the Tao integration stage, then progress to the God of creation stage, so I can be with you forever. Li Yin pouted as she looked at Ding Xiaoru. The two of them couldn't help but smile at each other as they hugged tightly. It was an extremely sweet scene. Anlin didn't look at them. Instead, he turned to Tina with a curious expression. How many people can you protect? I don't know. I don't have a good understanding of the power of the heavenly Tao of the main continent, but I think Ding Xiaoru can only protect one person with all his might. I'm not even at the God of creation stage, so I can probably protect half a person? Tina guessed with a blink of her green eyes. Anlin, that was a stab to the heart. However, if I make the divine mirror world more powerful than the main Tai Chu continent and make my box bigger than the box on the Tai Chu continent, then the heavenly Tao won't be able to do anything to me, right? Tina suddenly asked. Ding Xiaoru couldn't help but burst into laughter upon hearing this. That's impossible. Even Pangu couldn't create a second Tai Chu continent after creating the Tai Chu continent. The Tai Chu continent is the most primordial existence, and no world can replace it. Oh. Tina nodded, but she didn't think so. Her divine mirror world was progressing very quickly. What if she succeeded? If even a goddess of creation didn't have the confidence to surpass the Tai Chu continent and set a limit for herself, then the world she created would really be limited. Rather than creating a world that's more powerful than the Tai Chu continent, it's more realistic to cultivate and become a being above the God of creation stage. Of course, this reality is only relative to creating a world more powerful than the Tai Chu continent. This method is also unrealistic for us, Ding Xiaoru said with a smile. As far as I know, only Pangu, the god born from chaos, can surpass the great Tao of heaven and earth and attain true transcendence. The others can't take that step in the end. When facing the power of the heavenly Tao, we can only hide in the world we created. However, if it was in existence above the creation stage, and had already attained the supreme godly seat, transcending the entire world, heaven and earth are destroyed, but they are still alive. Where can they go? Even the paramount god of the ghost tribe, Patriarch Zhu Yin, was filled with yearning as he spoke. Transcend the Tao of heaven and earth. Anlin murmured. A thought seemed to have occurred to him, and his expression shifted slightly. Are you talking about the heavenly true immortal? He had a system mission regarding a high-rank war god mystic technique known as the Dark Immortal Transformation. He had to obtain the essential remains of the heavenly true immortal and consume it in order to complete the mission. Heavenly true immortal? Patriarch Zhu Yin stroked his chin. That sounds a little familiar. Pangu referred to himself as the chaotic patriarch god, so he definitely wouldn't call himself a true immortal. I recall that the destruction of the ancient Tai Chu realm had something to do with the heavenly true immortal. Unlin's heart jolted upon hearing this. He had heard from the celestial Dharch that information about the heavenly true immortal was recorded on a stone tablet in the ancient Tai Chu realm. It looked like he would have to make a trip to the ancient Tai Chu realm if he wanted to obtain more information. Even Patriarch Zhu Yin didn't know much about the heavenly true immortal. Unlin didn't pry any further. However, he was a little disappointed that his previous speculation had been useless. Even God of Creation stage mighty figures could only protect themselves in the face of attacks from the heavenly Tao. It was extremely difficult to protect others. At the end of the day, the human race had no path of retreat. They had to either crush the heavens or mend the heavens. Nuwa was the god of creation of the spirit demon tribe, so was the heaven-mending sect really reliable? The heaven-crushing sect had given the human race a lot of hope, but the leader of the heaven-crushing sect was Cyril, the god of creation of the true demon tribe. Would he really protect the human race wholeheartedly? Perhaps he didn't even want to protect all living beings on the Tai Chu continent in the first place. His true goal was to use the power of the human race to crush the heavens and replace them. Also, what were the other gods of creation doing? The heavenly lord of primordial beginning, Pangu, was a being above the god of creation stage, so the heavenly lord of numinous treasure and the heavenly lord of Tao and virtue were at least at the god of creation stage as well. What were they doing? Tao Lord Lu Yo was also at the god of creation stage, so what was he doing? Unlin didn't know what those mighty figures were thinking, but he knew that it was better to rely on himself than on others. Right now, he had to improve himself as quickly as possible. In the northern region of the opposite shore realm, there was a vast expanse of dark sky and a vibrant, colorful earth. There were countless black mountain peaks that rose from the ground like sharp swords. Some of them were several thousand feet tall, and they stood upright like divine swords. Some of them were over 100,000 feet tall, and they pierced through the heavens. All of the mountain peaks were extremely steep, and there were all types of black mist revolving around them. This was one of the most terrifying types of energy in the opposite shore realm, the dark earth energy. Among the countless mountain peaks, there was a gargantuan mountain that was over 30,000 feet tall. This was the center of the entire northern region of the opposite shore realm. Boundless dark earth energy converged here, making the mountain peak stand upright like a black sword. It was extremely sharp, like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, but also like the abyss of despair. At the same time, this was also the location of one of the 10 major cities of the opposite shore realm, Tianming City. The city was built along the mountain peak, and it spiraled up to the summit of the mountain peak. The streets were like winding dragons, and the countless pavilions were constructed in an extremely dangerous manner. Some of them even protruded out of the cliffs, while others floated in the air. They couldn't even be bothered to build bridges. However, the living beings here were already used to this. It didn't matter if the buildings were high or dangerous. This was because they could all float. Most adult members of the ghost tribe had mastered the ability to float for a long or short period of time. If they couldn't float, they would be too embarrassed to admit that they were members of the ghost tribe. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, Tina, Ding Xiaoru, and Li Yin all wore black robes, and they also did as the Romans do, and they floated all the way up Tianming City. Chapter 16:15. Ding Xiaoru wanted to empathize with the people, which was why he suggested that they disguise themselves as a normal ghost before slowly drifting through the street. Enlin's lips twitched as he looked at the two of them, who were holding hands as they strolled through the streets. This wasn't empathizing with the people. This was more like accompanying a Tao partner on a vacation. All of the living beings along the way were drifting through the air. The street lights were all dark green and dark red, and one could only see a series of black shadows drifting around them. From Enlin's perspective, the scenery was extremely bad. However, Ding Xiaoru and Li Yin were having so much fun that they had almost forgotten that they were here to do business. And Lin held onto Su Xiaolan's soft hand as they strolled through the streets in a bored manner. Don't miss out on this opportunity. The Dark Spirit King is full of praise for this dark meat. It's extremely delicious. It looks, smells, and tastes great. 2 spirit stones for 1. You'll feel extremely refreshed and invigorated. A skeleton with black fur on its back was yelling from a shop. And Lin's attention was drawn toward that direction. That shop was selling a local delicacy. It was a ball of inky black rotten meat with bursts of dark energy revolving around it and emanating a foul stench. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly with disdain. Is this really delicious? Lin repressed the urge to vomit, and he was also quite disdainful. You're going to die if you eat this, right? What shocked them was that there were actually quite a few people lining up at the side, and some were even eating with relish, chewing the rotten meat with great enjoyment. Erg! Su Xiaolan couldn't help but throw up as a sign of respect. Tina blinked with curiosity in her eyes as a bold idea occurred to her. Giant and Lin, I want to try it, Tina said. If you really want to eat something that disgusting, then don't lie on my shoulder after you eat it. And Lin didn't disguise his disdain toward the dark meat at all. He didn't lower his volume. An 8-armed blue fire ghost that happened to pass by was annoyed. It floated in front of Lin and said, "What's wrong? Are you looking down on our Tianming city's dark cuisine?" And Lin was astonished. Doesn't dark cuisine mean that they look down on me? How was it that this blue fire wraith was able to say such a thing without batting an eyelid? He glanced at the blue fire ghost, shrugged, and continued to walk forward, too lazy to care about it. Wait, you insulted our Tianming city's dark cuisine, and you still want to leave? The blue fire ghost quickly floated in front of Lin as it spoke with an enraged expression. Lin was speechless. I'm talking about how disgusting the dark meat seller is. Why are you, a road ghost, sticking your nose into other people's business? Roar. Disgusting? How dare you say that our Tianming city's signature, dark meat, is disgusting? Blue flame ghost fire flared up, and the dark blue flames soared 30 feet into the air. Lin was astonished. This spirit-nurturing stage piece of trash was yelling at him? The blue fire ghost pointed at Lin with an enraged expression. The dark meat is a specialty snack created by the Dark Spirit King, and all of our ghost tribe members are full of praise for it. How dare you insult a snack created by the Dark Spirit King? I'm just giving a simple comment. It's up to you whether you like the snack or not. Also, what does this have to do with you? Lin's expression darkened. The altercation between Lin and the blue fire ghost attracted the attention of all the nearby road ghosts. The blue fire ghost pulled out a black crystalline minotaur hat from its storage ring before placing it on its head. All of the ghosts let loose cries of surprise. It's a Tianming hat. Ah. So it's a soldier of Tianming City. No wonder it's already at the spirit-nurturing stage at such a young age. It's a prodigy who joined the Northern First Army of the opposite shore realm. I heard that black-robed ghost insulted the dark meat right in front of it. Looks like we're in for a good show. The blue fire ghost raised its proud head upon hearing the commotion around it. It extended all 8 of its hands before pointing at Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina in a cold voice. You've insulted the Dark Spirit King in public. Come with me to the Tianming City Judgment Ground to be judged. Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. I only said the dark meat is disgusting. I didn't insult the Dark Spirit King. The blue fire ghost's flames erupted for over 100 feet. You still dare to say it's disgusting? I told you, this is a specialty snack created by the Dark Spirit King, so insulting the dark meat is the same as insulting it. You can't taint anything that belongs to it. Its eyes shone with a scorching light as it spoke with an extremely excited expression. Lin's heart stirred, and he yelled at the purple-robed man who was inspecting the skeleton artwork nearby, "Ding Xiaoru, come over here and tell me what you think of this dark meat?" The purple-robed man made his way over with a woman in a colorful dress in his hand. Li Yin's eyes widened with disgust as she stared at the lumps of black rotten meat with a few black worms squirming on its surface. "What the hell is this? It's so disgusting." Ding Xiaoru looked at the relatively pure dark energy on the rotten meat and offered an objective evaluation. Extracting dark energy from rotten meat and dark worms is not a bad method. The combination of the rotten meat and dark worms can help preserve the dark energy. However, eating it just like that is really disgusting. "Alright, you dare to insult the Dark Spirit King? Come on, ghost. Tie them up," the blue fire ghost roared. "Ding Xiaoru." Its voice had only just fallen when a few armored ghosts suddenly appeared among the onlookers. They pressed their ghostly claws against everyone's necks, as if they were going to stab into everyone's necks at any moment. Ding Xiaoru's expression darkened. "Do you know what you're trying to tie up? I don't care who you are." The blue fire ghost chuckled coldly. "This is the Dark Spirit King's territory. Even if you're a return to void stage mighty figure, you still have to be punished for insulting the Dark Spirit King. In Tianming City, the Dark Spirit King is the paramount god, and this is the sky." All of the onlookers hooted in unison. "Tie them up! Tie them up! Tie them up! How dare you insult the Dark Spirit King in public? You deserve to die. Trash like this should be fed to dark worms." The ghosts all shared a common enemy, cruel smiles on their faces. Ding Xiaoru was dumbstruck. Was this the norm in Tianming City nowadays? He couldn't even say anything about the Dark Spirit King here? No, he wasn't talking about the Dark Spirit King at all. He couldn't even talk about dark meat. An amused smile appeared on Enlin's face as he looked at Ding Xiaoru. "Put the soul-locking cuffs on me." The blue fire ghost was still as arrogant as ever. "Even if the Dark Spirit King were here, it wouldn't dare to speak to me like this," Ding Xiaoru said in an indifferent voice. "You're still flexing? I think you must be tired of living." The blue fire ghost stretched out its 8 arms and grabbed at Ding Xiaoru. Chapter 16:16. The blue fire ghost's 8 flaming hands were extremely fast, and they reached the purple-robed man in the blink of an eye. However, at the same time, a peculiar power appeared in the air like a barrier. The 8 fiery hands that were moving swiftly and violently were actually stopped in their tracks. "What?" The blue fire ghost's expression shifted. No wonder you were so arrogant. So you're a soul formation stage, or return to void stage mighty figure." The blue fire ghost chuckled coldly. It instantly realized that this intruder was no ordinary being, but it was still not afraid. This was Tianming City, the territory of the Dark Spirit King, and no one dared to offend the Dark Spirit King here. "Ha ha, alright. Seeing as you're a powerful ghost tribe cultivator, you can also be exempted from the judgment." The blue fire ghost's expression softened a little. Ding Xiaoru was a little surprised. These so-called lackeys of the Dark Spirit King weren't all that unreasonable and lawless. At the very least, they had a certain level of respect and reverence toward powerful beings. In the next instant, the blue fire ghost pointed at the summit of the mountain. "Kneel and kowtow to the Dark Spirit King in the clouds right here, and I'll exempt you from the judgment." Everyone suddenly fell silent. Enlin, Su Xiaolan drew a sharp intake of breath. Tina secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. A thought appeared in their minds at the same time. This blue fire ghost was bad *SS. Even a freak like Enlin didn't dare to say something like this to Ding Xiaoru. But this blue fire ghost dared to tell Ding Xiaoru to kneel and kowtow. The ignorant were fearless, and this was a perfect example of this. "You want me to kneel and kowtow to the Dark Spirit King?" Ding Xiaoru's eyes gradually lit up. Rumble, wind and clouds suddenly surged between heaven and earth. "Huh? Is it going to rain?" The blue fire ghost looked up at the sky, and it felt as if there were massive beasts roaring in the distance, striking it with a sense of pressure. If you want to kneel, then kneel. You don't have the King right to do that. If you're not going to kneel, then come with me to the Judgment Plaza. The Dark Spirit King just so happened to come out of seclusion, and it'll be able to witness the tragic consequences you suffer when you humiliate it, haha. The flames around the blue fire ghost's body trembled with laughter. It wasn't worried that the Dark Spirit King would attack it. After all, killing an Imperial Guard in Tianming City was the equivalent of directly challenging the Dark Spirit King, and that was a capital crime. Alright, let's see if the Dark Spirit King can force me to my knees. Ding Xiaoru was so enraged that he burst into laughter. Lead the way, I'll come with you to the Judgment Plaza. You're quite sensible. The blue fire ghost snorted coldly. Tianming City has its own rules. There's no use resisting. If you obediently accept your punishment, you might be able to keep your life. After it finished speaking, it began to float to the top of the mountain. At the same time, a ball of flame began to carry Lin and the others all the way to the top of the huge mountain. A few armored imps used their ghostly claws to block them and flew all the way up into the sky. Lin silently sympathized with the blue fire ghost, worrying about its future. Would it be able to live for another 2 hours or 4 hours? That was the question. However, its life had not been in vain. Being able to hurl abuse at the paramount god of the ghost tribe and force it to kneel and kowtow to him was already the pinnacle of its ghostly life. Just this experience alone was enough to completely crush countless mighty figures. At the Judgment Plaza of Tianming City. This was a place where all types of criminals were judged. The blue fire ghost had already reported what it had encountered to its superiors, and it had received permission to participate in the judgment. Apparently, the Dark Spirit King, who had just come out of seclusion, was also going to attend the judgment. Perhaps it had nothing better to do, or perhaps it wanted to have some fun. This had alerted some of the higher-ups of Tianming City, and many ghost tribe powerful beings also flew toward the Judgment Plaza to join in on the fun. The blue fire ghost was in an extremely good mood. Never would it have thought that a simple judgment would attract so many important figures to spectate. This was a great opportunity for it to showcase itself. Perhaps it could even win over He Piaomei and reach the pinnacle of its ghostly life. That's right, judging a living being that disrespected the Dark Spirit King was a great achievement, especially when it was being judged in front of so many people. On the massive plaza that was paved with black dark crystals, tens of thousands of powerful ghost tribe powerful beings had already gathered here to spectate the show. There were ghost saber execution platforms, soul-grinding execution platforms, infernal flame execution platforms. There were hundreds of execution platforms of all shapes and sizes. The judges would make judgments based on the crimes that the criminal had committed, then execute the criminal. There were many types of consequences for disrespecting the Dark Spirit King. The most severe punishment was the death penalty, while the least severe punishment was some ordinary physical punishment. At this moment, a monster with a Western dragon body and 9 twisted black heads was lying on a high round throne, looking down at the judgment field. It was shrouded in a cold and dark aura. The 9 black heads corresponded to 9 different types of primordial beasts, and all of them exuded terrifying auras that were powerful enough to crush the heavens. This was the ruler of the northern region of the opposite shore realm, the Dark Spirit King that ruled over billions of ghostly soldiers. The Dark Spirit King had just come out of seclusion, and its dark earth energy had been perfected, so it was in an extremely good mood, and it was in a good mood to spectate the judgment. Among the tens of thousands of ghost tribe powerful beings, there were some extremely important powerful beings and mighty figures who offered congratulatory gifts to the Dark Spirit King. As for judging minor characters, they weren't interested. They were only taking this rare opportunity to congratulate the Dark Spirit King, who had just emerged from seclusion. "Get up there! Hurry up!" the blue fire ghost yelled at Enlin and the others. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, Ding Xiaoru, and the others were being held hostage by a few ghostly soldiers as they slowly drifted toward the center of the Judgment Plaza. "Kneel!" the blue fire ghost roared. "The Dark Spirit King is going to judge all of you in person today, so it's an honor for all of you." The blue fire ghost yelled in a particularly loud voice, as if it was trying to show off. Regardless of whether it was Enlin or Ding Xiaoru, neither of them moved as they stood silently on the spot. It was impossible to see their faces under their black robes. The tens of thousands of Ghost Tribe powerful beings on the Judgment Plaza were all looking at the two of them as if they were enjoying a good show. Some sneered coldly, some wore mocking expressions, and some shook their heads in resignation. The Dark Spirit King has only just come out of seclusion, and these unlucky bastards are going to walk right into its trap. I wonder if the Dark Spirit King is going to show them mercy or make them suffer a fate worse than death so that all living beings in this world know that its might cannot be challenged. They don't seem to be kneeling? Apparently they're quite powerful, but they're so arrogant. Looks like they're going to become the Dark Spirit King's pitiful victims. All of the Ghost Tribe powerful beings looked at the living beings that didn't kneel, and the disdain in their eyes became even more pronounced. The Dark Spirit King's 9 eyes narrowed slightly as killing intent surged from its body. "Why aren't you kneeling in front of me?" Ding Xiaoru raised his head slightly to reveal his eyes. "Who do you think you are to make me kneel?" Chapter 16-17. Boom. This was like a clap of thunder that struck all of the ghosts' ears. All of the tens of thousands of Ghost Tribe powerful beings were given a fright upon hearing this. How could this ghost say things like the Dark Spirit King was nothing? Was it tired of living? The blue fire ghost was completely dumbstruck. Never would it have thought that the living being it had brought would dare to insult the Dark Spirit King on the spot. This was no longer something that could be explained by mere courage. "Stupid piece of trash, how dare you insult the Dark Spirit King?" the blue fire ghost roared as its 8 tentacles lashed toward Ding Xiaoru. Li Yin opened her dazzling eyes, and a colorful energy soul sword suddenly appeared in the air before instantly pinning the blue fire ghost to the ground. "Ah!" the blue fire ghost howled with agony. It could feel its consciousness being incinerated relentlessly. This was pain that struck deep into its soul. It was quite clear that Li Yin didn't want to kill it. Instead, she wanted to torture it. "How dare you harm our heavenly Dark Imperial Guards!" 6 ghost generals pounced toward Li Yin while unleashing all types of soul formation stage domains. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, 6 colorful energy soul swords appeared in the air before stabbing down at an extremely terrifying speed, pinning the oncoming ghost generals to the Judgment Plaza. The blood-curdling cries of the ghost generals erupted throughout the entire Judgment Plaza. Another insta-kill. Li Yin didn't move a single step. In fact, she didn't even avert her gaze as she stood silently on the spot. This created a massive stir throughout the entire Judgment Plaza. "Those ghost generals are returned to Void Stage mighty figures? No wonder they have such a bad temper. Even returned to Void Stage mighty figures have to kneel before the Dark Spirit King. They don't know what's good for them and have angered the Spirit King. They're just courting death." Sigh, how stupid! All of the Ghost Tribe powerful beings' expressions became even more disdainful and disdainful. In this place, the Dark Spirit King was like a god, the most powerful being that couldn't be offended. No Ghost Tribe cultivator dared to piss it off, as only death awaited them. "Who do I think I am?" the Dark Spirit King murmured to itself as its massive body slowly rose to its feet. Its 9 twisted beastly heads looked down at everyone on the Judgment Plaza. "I control the life and death of the dark realm, and I am the feudal lord of the northern part of the opposite shore realm. I am the king who rules over a radius of several million kilometers, and I am the god of billions of ghostly soldiers. To me you are just ants." Its aura began to erupt with a loud rumble. It was as if the might of the heavens was crashing down upon them, making it difficult for the ghost race powerhouses to even breathe. It's over. The Dark Spirit King is completely enraged now. Humph. Bull Corpse King, have finally seen what a real idiot is. Haha, I'm sure they'll be squashed by the Dark Spirit King very soon. The ghoul powerhouses were all looking at the beings at the center of the arena with great excitement. None of them would have thought that they would be able to judge a return to void stage mighty figure during a normal judgment. This was a once-in-a-century entertainment event. The Dark Spirit King spoke in an indifferent voice. The gods won't be enraged by ants disrespecting them. If they feel like they're an eyesore, they can just stomp them to death. After it finished speaking, one of its 9 heads, the ghost monkey head, opened its scarlet mouth, and a pitch-black nether aura gushed out from within. It was like a dark waterfall, and wherever it passed, the void would shatter, and all vitality would be absorbed and devoured by this nether aura. And Lin was astonished. I understand that, but why did it attack me first? Why hadn't the Dark Spirit King attacked Li Yin first or Ding Xiaoru first? Why hadn't the Dark Spirit King attacked Li Yin first or Ding Xiaoru first? This was way too illogical. The Dark Spirit King was still wearing a mocking sneer on its face. It was naturally not going to kill the ants that were talking back to it. It was going to kill the other ants to intimidate the 2 nearby ants. It was going to grant them fear and despair before slowly torturing them to death. It's here. That's the Dark Spirit King's dark earthly energy. What terrifying divine Tao might! The dark earthly energy is the most poisonous dark energy in the entire opposite shore realm. It's born in the land of extreme Yin in the veins of the earth. Not only does it freeze the heavens, but it's also invincible. Those who are struck by it will die in excruciating pain as their divine sense is slowly devoured. It's using its most powerful attack right off the bat. Is it trying to kill a chicken with a butcher's knife? Tens of thousands of ghosts hurtled back in retreat with astonishment on their faces. They didn't want to be affected by the shockwaves of the battle. A purple-robed man also instantly appeared before Enlin before gently waving a sleeve through the air. Bam! The netherworld aura was like a cloud, dissipating into thin air with a pat of the sleeve. It didn't leave any trace in this world. What? The Dark Spirit King shuddered as incredulity appeared in all 9 of its eyes. The tens of thousands of ghost-powerful beings stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. That ghost had dispelled the Dark Spirit King's most powerful attack with a casual wave of his hand? One had to realize that the Dark Spirit King was a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Who are you? The Dark Spirit King was a little panicked. Who am I? Ding Xiaoru removed his black robe and clasped his hands behind his back as he stared at the Dark Spirit King with a cold expression. Open your stupid eyes and take a good look. The Dark Spirit King's eyes widened as it stared at the man with a dumbstruck expression. So who are you? Everyone fell silent. Only then did Ding Xiaoru realize that he was still in his human form. However, if he were to reveal his 1,000-kilometer true body, the entire Tianming city would probably be crushed by him. Boom! A burst of paramount divine might suddenly erupted forth. All of the ghost tribe powerful beings were struck by a sense of oppression. A figure with crimson dragon scales that were as dazzling as the sun appeared in the sky above. This was Patriarch Zhu Yin's projection of the Dharma projection. His true body hadn't appeared, but just the projection alone was enough to make all of the hundreds of millions of ghost tribe powerful beings in Tianming City tremble uncontrollably as they looked up at the projection in the sky. What the hell is that thing? It's so terrifying. I can't even move. All of the ghost tribe powerful beings on the judgment platform were astonished. Could it be? Patriarch Zhu Yin? No way. That purple-robed man, all of the ghost tribe powerful beings' eyes widened as waves of shock surged through their hearts. Even the mighty Dark Spirit King was trembling uncontrollably. It wasn't an idiot, and it could naturally sense that peerlessly terrifying power even more clearly than the average ghost tribe powerful being. This was definitely not a being it could mess with. It was a Tao integration stage super mighty figure, but it couldn't muster up any thoughts of resistance. Ding Xiaoru took a step forward and looked at the Dark Spirit King with a cold expression. Do you still dare to make me kneel to you? Chapter 1618. The purple-robed man's identity was already quite apparent. No matter how unbelievable it was, the truth was right before their eyes, and they couldn't deny it no matter how absurd it was. That's right, this man was the paramount god of the ghost tribe, Patriarch Zhu Yin. As for making the paramount god of the ghost tribe kneel and kowtow in apology? The Dark Spirit King knelt onto the judgment platform with a thump, and its 9 heads slammed into the ground as it kowtowed over and over again. Patriarch Zhu Yin, I was wrong. Please be merciful and spare my life. This mighty figure was now kowtowing over and over again like a child who had made a mistake. Bam bam bam! The Dark Spirit King slammed its heads into the ground over and over again, as if it was trying to express its apology. It was still a high and mighty god just a second ago, looking down at Ding Xiaoru as if he were an ant. In the next second, the roles had been reversed, and it had become the ant that was being stomped on the ground. However, it had to be said that the Dark Spirit King had reacted very quickly. If it had continued to flex, Ding Xiaoru wouldn't have minded slapping it to death. The blue fire ghost that had been pinned to the ground by Li Yin's sword stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before its eyes. The man it had been cursing at was the paramount god of the ghost tribe, the most powerful king in the entire opposite shore realm? It wanted Patriarch Zhu Yin to kneel and kowtow to the Dark Spirit King? Now, the Dark Spirit King was kneeling and kowtowing to Patriarch Zhu Yin in apology f*ck. What the hell had I done? Boundless horror and remorse almost engulfed the blue fire ghost. At this moment, Ding Xiaoru slowly made his way over to the Dark Spirit King before stomping a foot onto one of its heads, upon which the other 8 heads were glued to the ground, not daring to move. I said, the dark meat you created is very disgusting. Do you concede? Ding Xiaoru asked. Yes, I concede. The Dark Spirit King's voice trembled as it spoke. Is the dark meat you created disgusting? Ding Xiaoru increased the force of his foot as he continued. The Dark Spirit King was on the verge of tears. Disgusting. Super disgusting. At this moment, all of the ghost tribe powerful beings present came to a sudden realization as to why things had turned out this way. Patriarch Zhu Yin had criticized the dark meat as disgusting, and the Dark Royal Guard had refused to accept this and brought him here to be judged. Countless pairs of eyes involuntarily turned to look at the blue fire ghost that was impaled on the ground. The Dark Spirit King's eyes seemed to be able to kill as it glared at the blue fire ghost with resentment. This was all because of this blue fire ghost. If it hadn't interfered with Patriarch Zhu Yin and provoked him, Patriarch Zhu Yin wouldn't have come here. If Patriarch Zhu Yin really was enraged, then all of the ghost tribe beings present could be killed. After all, Patriarch Zhu Yin was no saint. He was a demon that had dominated the entire ghost tribe. Everything was the blue fire wraith's fault. Everything was the blue fire wraith's fault. The ghost tribe did not think about the true reason for this outcome. They only wanted to use the blue fire ghost as an outlet for their emotions. This was the first time that the blue fire ghost was being stared at by so many powerful beings of the ghost race. However, all of these gazes were filled with boundless rage and resentment. Tens of thousands of eyes stared at it, and it screamed in fear. Mournful cries resounded throughout the judgment field. The blue fire ghost's flames first exploded, then quickly dimmed and extinguished, its soul splitting and dissipating. After a while, there were no signs of life. Was it scared to death? And Lin was astonished. It was scared to death, Tina replied in an indifferent voice. The spirit-nurturing stage blue fire ghost of the heavenly dark Imperial Guard was scared out of its wits by the furious glares of so many ghost tribe mighty figures. Ding Xiaoru didn't even take a second glance at it. To him, the blue fire ghost was like a speck of dust that could be blown away at any time. He turned to the Dark Spirit King with a hint of interest in his eyes, and a hint of a smile appeared on his face. I, Zhu Yin, have lived for countless years, and no one has ever dared to speak to me like this. Do you really think I'll forgive you just by kowtowing a few times? I'm willing to accept any punishment. The Dark Spirit King trembled uncontrollably. All it wanted now was to survive. The most powerful being of the northern region of the opposite shore realm? Even the gods of the northern region of the opposite shore realm could only crawl and beg for mercy in the face of Patriarch Zhu Yin. This was because Patriarch Zhu Yin was a true god. Ding Xiaoru slowly removed his foot from the Dark Spirit King's head. Alright, I'll give you a chance to live. I'm here to do a favor for a friend of mine. Do a favor for a friend? The Dark Spirit King reflexively turned toward the other three black-robed living beings. If Patriarch Zhu Yin's friend needs help, then I, the Dark Spirit King, am willing to do anything to help him. It lowered its stance and spoke in an extremely enthusiastic manner. You've got to be kidding me. Patriarch Zhu Yin was here in person, so he had to earn as many points as he could. Perhaps he could even receive some guidance from Patriarch Zhu Yin. That would truly be a blessing in disguise. If Patriarch Zhu Yin needs anything from us, feel free to let us know. A return to void stage mighty figure said. That's right. We'll do everything in our power to fulfill the Patriarch's request. Many great figures of the ghost race also began to speak. They raised their hands and forcefully increased their favorability point. Ding Xiaoru nodded slightly before looking at the Dark Spirit King. That friend of mine wants to beat the crap out of you, so I'm here to help. The air suddenly became quiet. All of the ghost tribe mighty figures drew a sharp intake of breath. They had just been scrambling to help Patriarch Zhu Yin beat the crap out of the Dark Spirit King? The Dark Spirit King's entire body trembled. It had just been fighting for an opportunity to help Patriarch Zhu Yin's friend beat itself up? It was beating itself up? What the hell was going on? How could this be? Why is this happening? The Dark Spirit King's entire body was like a Spartan, and it looked like it had been played to death. Could this be fate playing tricks on it? The mighty paramount god of the ghost tribe, the renowned Patriarch Zhu Yin, had come here to help his friend beat up a ghost tribe Dao integration stage super mighty figure. The Dark Spirit King looked at the black-robed figures before it with a confused expression. Who are you? Why are you beating me up? It was thinking back to all of its past enemies, trying to figure out which Dao integration stage super mighty figure had come to seek revenge. Anlin and Su Xiaolan didn't waste any more time with words, and they immediately took off their black robes. A man in a flowing white robe and a woman in a jade robe appeared before the tens of thousands of ghost tribe powerful beings. All of the ghost tribe powerful beings looked as if they had seen a ghost, and their mouths gaped open. Sect leader Anlin? The divine phoenix maiden. All of the ghost tribe powerful beings were astonished. The most renowned being on the Tai Chu continent had appeared in the opposite shore realm. He had slain heavenly gods, destroyed a heavenly Dao, and broken the heavenly gate. He was a supremely talented prodigy, and he had traveled all the way from the Kingdom of the Nine States to the opposite shore realm just to beat up the Dark Spirit King. The Dark Spirit King was completely dumbstruck, and all of its 9 heads were at a complete loss. Who am I? Where am I? Why did I provoke these people? It felt like everything that had happened today was far too surreal. Patriarch Zhu Yin hadn't appeared in the world for a long time, and as soon as he did, he brought Anlin, who had just broken the southern heavenly gate, to beat it up. What had it done to deserve this? That's right, the Dark Spirit King had a mental breakdown in that instant. Chapter 16-19. The Dark Spirit King hadn't even begun, and it was already on the verge of breaking down. Unlin made his way toward the Dark Spirit King, and his aura began to climb explosively. Origin energy of the Netherworld. Fire God mode. Star Vein explosion technique. The triple buff spell technique elevated his aura to an extremely terrifying level. Ding Xiaoru clapped his hands before turning toward the tens of thousands of Ghost Tribe powerful beings with a smile. Didn't you say you wanted to help? What are you all standing around for? Have you changed your mind? Change his mind? Wasn't changing his mind the same as opposing Patriarch Zhu Yin? They might be able to escape if they offended the Dark Spirit King, but offending the paramount god of the Ghost Tribe was the same as committing suicide. The tens of thousands of Ghost Tribe powerful beings immediately pounced toward the Dark Spirit King while roaring. Countless powerful spell techniques swept through heaven and earth. Myriad Poison Curse, Dark Ghost Claw, Silver Heaven Slaying Blade, Blood Soul Falling Heavenly Hand. All of them engulfed the gargantuan body in the blink of an eye. Boom, boom, boom. Countless ghosts wailed and howled on the Judgment Plaza. Unlin yelled, "Release that beast and let me go first." He didn't want to see his enemy die before he even had a chance to attack. Patriarch Zhu Yin pulled out a red feather fan and waved it gently with a smile. Dark Spirit King, you can attack with your full power. Unlin is here to beat you into submission. If you can last 15 minutes, I'll spare your life and forgive you for what you did in the past. Boom. Just as his voice fell, an extremely terrifying power of darkness suddenly erupted from the area engulfed by the spell techniques, instantly engulfing the countless spell techniques hurtling toward it before spreading for over 10 kilometers. Ah! One Ghost Tribe powerful being after another fell amid blood-curdling cries. Not only was the dark earth energy extremely powerful, but it could also engulf the life force of powerful beings to nourish itself. If you're not afraid of death, then come at me. His words, which were filled with monstrous might, carried boundless viciousness and darkness, resounded through the heavens and the earth. The Dark Spirit King had only been bullied by the Ghost Tribe powerful beings because it didn't dare to attack Patriarch Zhu Yin. Now that he had received Patriarch Zhu Yin's permission, he was naturally able to unleash his true power. The might of a Dao integration stage super mighty figure was not something that tens of thousands of Ghost Tribe powerful beings could stand against. Just a single enraged attack would be enough to annihilate thousands of Ghost Tribe powerful beings. However, at this moment, a man shrouded in flames descended like the sun. He tore through the Dark Spirit King's earthly dark energy before unleashing a fist upon its body. Rumble! The fist energy contained an unparalleled divine might. Like the explosion of the sun, it shattered and melted everything around the judgment stage. The Tianming Mountain, which was hundreds of thousands of feet tall, also began to shake violently. The divine fire dissipated, and Enlin's fist was firmly pressed against a black armor. The Dark Spirit King's entire body was covered in a suit of armor materialized from dark energy, and it remained completely unscathed after taking Enlin's punch. A sinister smile appeared on its face. Not only is the earthly dark energy the most terrifying dark energy in the opposite shore realm, but it also contains the vast power of the earth, which can provide extremely nature-defying defensive effects. I've already cultivated the earthly dark energy to the pinnacle and fused it into my divine Tao. There's no way you'll be able to break through my defenses in 15 minutes. The Dark Spirit King was only at the Tao integration initial stage, so it wasn't confident that it could defeat Enlin. However, it was very confident that it could defend itself against Enlin's attacks for 15 minutes. Enlin's expression remained unchanged, and he continued to smash his fists down upon the suit of armor. Boom, boom, boom. It was as if a series of nuclear bombs had exploded, and destructive power shook heaven and earth. All of the Ghost Tribe powerful beings were knocked back by the shockwaves. Hurry! If we want to live, we have to get away from here. So powerful! Is this sect leader Enlin's power? They're not going to tear down the Tianming mountain like this, are they? All of the ghost tribe powerful beings retreated as they looked on at the center of the battle. The Dark Spirit King wasn't just focusing on defense. Its 9 long necks extended as it swung its heads toward Enlin like giant hammers. Every time Enlin's fists collided with the Dark Spirit King's heads, he would feel as if an extremely vast and powerful divine mountain was crashing down upon his fists. However, he didn't use any of his other abilities and continued to clash with the Dark Spirit King. Ding Xiaoru unleashed a spell technique to reinforce the Tianming mountain while spectating Enlin's battle with an intrigued expression. TSK, as expected, seeing is believing. Enlin is only at the return to void initial stage, but he's able to fight against a Dao integration initial stage being. He's the most freakishly talented I've ever seen. The paramount god of the ghost tribe didn't mind at all that Enlin was wreaking havoc in his territory. Instead, he found it to be quite interesting. After seeing Enlin fight, he was even more satisfied with the outcome. After a series of intense battles, the Dark Spirit King had also gained confidence, and it was attacking more and more aggressively. Meanwhile, Enlin had developed an objective understanding of his own combat prowess. Without using any hacks, his regular combat prowess was already on par with a Dao integration initial stage super mighty figure. After confirming this, he didn't hold back and unleashed his trump card. Xiaolan, come and help me! Enlin roared. The cry of a vermilion bird instantly erupted into the heavens. Terrifying might and bloodline pressure transformed into boundless pressure that made the Dark Spirit King's breathing falter. At this moment, a figure in a jade dress wielding a dragon sparrow sword flew through the air. The dragon sparrow sword struck the Dark Spirit King's neck with extreme sharpness. The dark earth energy armor clashed with the dragon sparrow sword, upon which an extremely sharp light erupted. A sharp pain suddenly shot through the Dark Spirit King's neck, and it was astonished to discover that Su Xiaolan's sword strike had cracked open its armor. Roar! The Dark Spirit King panicked, and it let loose an almighty roar as its other heads hurtled through the air toward the petite woman like divine mountains. Go, Xiaolan! Enlin rushed to Su Xiaolan's side as a golden lotus insignia appeared on his forehead. He activated his 9-fold Earth Lotus Supreme skill to its fullest extent. He didn't unleash his powers of the heavenly gods in front of Ding Xiaoru. However, the Dao true intent of the 9th stage Earth Lotus Supreme skill was infinitely close to the essence of the Earth, and it could be said to be the purest and most ferocious power of the Earth. Enlin's palm was enshrouded in layers of golden light as the power of the Earth surged forth. Earth-quaking palm. This was a divine ability that he had attained after breaking through to the 8th stage of the Earth Lotus Supreme skill, and it could draw upon extremely terrifying power of the Earth. His palm was imbued with boundless power of the Earth, and it reached over 1,000 feet in length before crashing down with earth-shattering might. Bam! 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 Enlin swatted away the 8 oncoming heads like he was swatting a volleyball. The Dark Spirit King was knocked dizzy by Enlin's attacks, and it felt as if its head had been shattered. However, that wasn't the most terrifying thing. Its aura had become extremely unstable after being struck by Enlin's attacks, and the dark earth energy armor it had materialized had also become vulnerable. Su Xiaolan's sword strike was like a hot knife through butter, completely tearing through the armor on its neck before slicing open its flesh and bones. An earth-shattering howl of anguish erupted. The Dark Spirit King's head was severed by Su Xiaolan's sword, and blood splattered through the air. Chapter 1620. One of the Dark Spirit King's heads had been severed, but it still had 8 more heads. All of its heads exhaled a mouthful of earthly dark energy at the same time to impede Enlin and Su Xiaolan's approach, and it hurtled back in retreat, clearly trying to evade. However, its body crashed into a sturdy barrier, upon which it tremored violently again. What? This barrier? Only now did the Dark Spirit King discover that the Tianming Mountain had been enshrouded by an invisible barrier, and it was completely unable to escape. At this moment, a faint smile appeared on Ding Xiaoru's face. Dark Spirit King, I told you to hold on for 15 minutes, not to run away for 15 minutes. You have to understand that. The Dark Spirit King. Its escape route had already been cut off by Patriarch Zhuyin, so what else could it say? At this moment, Enlin and Su Xiaolan charged toward it again, exerting immense pressure on it. A sense of fear that it had never felt before finally welled up in its heart. Vermilion bird god vanquishing strike. Earth-quaking palm. Boom boom boom, sword projections swept through the air, holy flames exploded, and the power of the earth surged for over 50 kilometers. The Dark Spirit King howled with anguish, and it was no longer as powerful and domineering as before. If Enlin and Su Xiaolan were to unleash their full power, they would be able to battle even a mighty figure at the Dao integration pinnacle stage. This Dark Spirit King was only at the Dao integration initial stage, so they wouldn't even need to unleash their full power. Roar! Come on out, heavenly ghost sealing bell. The Dark Spirit King had been forced into a corner, and the golden spatial storage tool behind its tail flashed, upon which a massive black bell suddenly appeared in midair. The powerful energy fluctuations emanating from the divine tool made the entire space congeal. Ha ha! You're finally willing to let me out for some fresh air, old man. A sinister cackle sounded from the bell, and it was clearly very happy. Sing to your heart's content this time. Don't have to fear any living beings. A determined expression appeared on the Dark Spirit King's face as it spoke in a loud voice. It had rarely used the Heavenly Ghost suppressing bell before because even it could not completely control the power of the Heavenly Ghost suppressing bell. Once the Heavenly Ghost soul suppressing bell was used, it would be a full-range divine soul attack that didn't distinguish between friend and foe. Not only could it kill the enemy, but it could also wipe out its allies and even hurt its master. The only good thing was that the damage to the master would be much lower. The Dark Spirit King clearly didn't have any other options, so it could only unleash this self-destructive technique. So what if Enlin and Su Xiaolan were powerful? All cultivators had a weakness. If their consciousness was weak, then perhaps the Dark Spirit King would be able to kill them. A large number of incantations began to appear on the surface of the giant black bell. It began to laugh and said, "All right, then I'll speak." The terrifying and ear-piercing melody instantly reverberated in the void. The demonic voice from hell began to sound, "Look at that skull. It's big and round. Look at that hip bone, it's flat and wide." The bizarre lyrics pierced through the void and reached the ears of all living beings. Enlin felt as if his entire body had been invaded by the singing. The singing transformed into energy waves that tore at his body, and the peculiar soul power pierced through everything, reaching directly into his consciousness, as if it were trying to crush his consciousness into a boundless abyss and plunge him into eternal darkness. It had to be said that the Heavenly Ghost soul-suppressing bell was extremely powerful. Even though Enlin possessed the body of the war god, and his consciousness had already become extremely sturdy after experiencing 2 world creations and 2 world upgrades, he was still struck by the urge to vomit in that instant. Su Xiaolan's true dragon divine Dao had already been unleashed to protect its master in the instant that the singing had been unleashed. Even so, her expression was still a little dazed. As for the Dark Spirit King, it was already laughing heartily with blood flowing from all of its orifices. Feel despair. The Dark Spirit King glowered at Enlin and Su Xiaolan with resentment in its eyes. As long as the Heavenly Ghost soul suppressing bell opened its mouth, no one could withstand this kind of strange singing. Enlin finally vomited in the end. What disgusting music! Ha ha! No one can remain standing when my background music starts to play. The Heavenly Ghost soul-suppressing bell chortled with glee before continuing to sing. Enlin was feeling extremely unwell, and his eyes gradually turned golden. At the same time, a divine seal appeared on his forehead, from which bursts of golden divine light shone. "Shut up!" Enlin roared with rage. Great divine might technique activated. This was Enlin's most powerful soul spell technique. Golden ripples erupted forth with paramount might, as if a paramount god were roaring from heaven and earth, instantly engulfing the heavenly ghost soul-suppressing bells singing. The divine tool Heavenly Ghost Sealing Bell was extremely sensitive to divine soul spell techniques to begin with, and now, it could truly experience the terror of the great divine might technique. It was as if there really was a supreme god staring at it with his eyes, exerting boundless pressure on it as he roared with the peerless heavenly voice, F***CKU. The heavenly ghost soul-suppressing bell let loose a sharp cry, and it immediately fled back into the Dark Spirit King's storage magic tool. The terrifying singing abruptly cut off. Everyone suddenly fell silent. The Dark Spirit King's mouth gaped open, and the heads that were bleeding from all 7 of its orifices were completely dumbstruck. It ran away just like that? It was in disbelief. Right at this moment, the 2 terrifyingly powerful gods of slaughter charged toward it again. Only then did it discover with despair that it had sustained even more injuries than they had. "Go to hell! How dare you make me listen to such a horrible song?" Enlin roared with killing intent. "I can't let this be *starred live." Su Xiaolan harumphed coldly as her dragon sparrow sword rang loudly. Boom boom boom. The Dark Spirit King's blood-curdling cries reverberated throughout the Judgment Plaza again. Su Xiaolan's dragon sparrow sword flashed with lightning and decapitated 3 of the Dark Spirit King's heads. Enlin pulled out his evil-slaying sword and unleashed his evil sword technique's Eternal Night technique, slicing the Dark Spirit King's body in half. A ding-dong finally sounded from the system. The Dark Spirit King had appeared on the list of Tao Integration Stage super mighty figures that had been beaten into submission. There were now 9 spots, and Enlin had finally filled 7 of them. Done. Enlin was very elated, and he rewarded the Dark Spirit King with another nuclear lightning fist. Boom. Destructive energy surged through heaven and earth. The Dark Spirit King's earthly dark energy was pulverized by the power of the earth and the power of the golden void lightning before destroying its body. When the energy dissipated, the Dark Spirit King was already lying on the ground, trembling uncontrollably. All 5 of its heads wore expressions of complete despair. Enlin yelled to the tens of thousands of ghost tribe powerful beings behind him. The Dark Spirit King has already lost all ability to resist. What are you all waiting for? Let it receive the punishment it deserves. The tens of thousands of ghost tribe powerful beings finally came to their senses. That's right, the Dark Spirit King was like a dead fish now, so why not take this opportunity to curry favor with Patriarch Zhuyin? Thus, tens of thousands of ghost tribe powerful beings swarmed forward again, and countless powerful spell techniques fell upon the Dark Spirit King, instantly engulfing its body. Chapter 16:21. What was it like to be beaten up by tens of thousands of ghost tribe powerful beings at once? This was a terrifying experience where one's head could experience over 100 different types of pain. All types of cruel curses, lethal weapons, extreme soul attacks, and all types of other powers were unleashed. The Dark Spirit King felt as if it had been plunged into the most terrifying hell, and it was being tortured by tens of thousands of tortures. Duong! A loud and clear sound of the gong resounded throughout the ruling platform. A quarter of an hour is up. Everyone, stop. Ding Xiaoru's voice swept toward the ears of all of the ghost tribe powerful beings like a spring breeze. Patriarch Zhu Yin had spoken, so who dared to disobey? All of the ghost tribe powerful beings obediently stopped, but there was still a hint of disappointment on their faces. If they didn't kill the Dark Spirit King, what if its backer, Patriarch Zhu Yin, went somewhere else and the Dark Spirit King decided to come after them? However, this was Patriarch Zhu Yin's business, so the Dark Spirit King most likely wouldn't have the guts to come after them. Otherwise, wouldn't that be a slap to the face? The Dark Spirit King lay sprawled to the ground with wounds all over its body, and all 5 of its heads had tears in their eyes. A smile appeared on its face, as if it had just survived an ordeal. I finally made it through. It was already beyond recognition, and there were hundreds of thousands of wounds all over its body. All types of destructive power still lingered in its body, and it was only through sheer willpower that it was able to hold on. Enlin and Su Xiaolan had also stopped. They had already had their fill. Besides, they had promised Ding Xiaoru that they wouldn't kill the Dark Spirit King, and that they could only severely wound it. The Dark Spirit King's body and consciousness had both been severely wounded, and it wouldn't be able to recover without over 1,000 years of rest, let alone join the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. As for over 1,000 years? Enlin was confident that the Dark Spirit King would be nothing more than trash in his eyes by then. "It's so good to be alive," the Dark Spirit King said in a feeble voice. Ding Xiaoru made his way over to the Dark Spirit King again, and he couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of the gargantuan creature lying on the ground like a dead fish. "Do you know what you did wrong now? Thank you for sparing me, Patriarch Zhuyin. I shouldn't have insulted you and your friends." The Dark Spirit King apologized with all its might. Ding Xiaoru frowned again. The Dark Spirit King shuddered, and a thought seemed to have occurred to it. "I shouldn't have created such disgusting dark meat, and I shouldn't have made all living beings acknowledge it for no reason." Ding Xiaoru nodded and placed his hands behind his back. "Remember, if you're too arrogant, you'll be slapped in the face. Today, it was Enlin who slapped you in the face. Next time, it might be me who slapped you in the face." "Yes, Patriarch Zhuyin. I promise that this won't happen again." The Dark Spirit King's body trembled uncontrollably as it made a vow. If Patriarch Zhuyin were to slap its face in person, would it still be able to survive? That's impossible. In all honesty, it was all thanks to Ding Xiaoru and Li Yin that the Dark Spirit King was able to survive. It was in a good mood, and it didn't want to see any bloodshed. Otherwise, Ding Xiaoru would have killed the Dark Spirit King a long time ago. Ding Xiaoru turned his gaze to Enlin's group and said with a smile, "How is it? Are you satisfied with the beating? If not, we can add more time." "What? You can even add time?" Tears welled up in the Dark Spirit King's 5 heads at the same time. "I want to keep beating it, but with its injuries, it'll die if I punch it again." Enlin patted its head with a wistful expression. He didn't really care. He had already completed the system mission, and the Dark Spirit King had been severely injured, so it was no longer a threat to the human race. "Thank you, Sect Leader Enlin, for sparing my life." The Dark Spirit King lowered its head with an expression of humiliation. It was really unlucky today to have been targeted by Enlin. Even if the dark meat didn't happen, this scene would most likely have happened, right? The only thing that it couldn't understand was how Enlin was on such good terms with Patriarch Zhuyin. This didn't make any sense. No one could answer its questions. The only thing it knew was that Enlin was going to be invincible in the opposite shore realm from now on. Oh, there was one more thing, and that was the special flavor of dark meat. It was going to disappear without a trace. After beating the Dark Spirit King, Enlin, Ding Xiaoru, and the others left. They came and went like the wind. Tens of thousands of Ghost Tribe powerful beings also dispersed. Regardless of whether the Dark Spirit King dared to retaliate against them, they couldn't stay in Tianming City anymore. Even though they didn't reap any tangible rewards from being a bootlicker for the paramount god of the Ghost Tribe, it was still very satisfying. Only a small number of loyal Ghost Tribe powerful beings remained in Tianming City to clean up the mess for the Dark Spirit King, such as sweeping the ground and carrying the Dark Spirit King away, at the border of the opposite shore realm. The purple-robed Ding Xiaoru waved goodbye to Enlin. "Mr. Enlin, contact me via voice transmission talisman the next time you come to the opposite shore realm." Alright, goodbye, senior. Unlin bade farewell to Ding Xiaoru and Li Yin with a buoyant smile before flying into the territory of the sinister spirit beast cesspool. This trip to the opposite shore realm was even more rewarding than he had imagined. Not only had he successfully completed his mission, but he had also coincidentally obtained the underworld Dao flower and established a good relationship with Patriarch Zhu Yin. The process of beating up the Dark Spirit King was also extremely satisfying. With the paramount god of the Ghost Tribe, Patriarch Zhu Yin, around, how could he not be satisfied? The sun shone down upon them. The three of them were bathed in a warm light as they flew through the air. After leaving the opposite shore realm, everyone was finally able to see the sun again, and their moods were a lot better. Our next target is the Divine Bat Emperor. According to our information, it's currently at the Heavenly Beast Divine Mountain in the central region of the sinister spirit beast cesspool, Su Xiaolan said as she looked at the information from the 4-9 Immortal Sex Intelligence Department. The Divine Bat Emperor. An old friend. Unlin smiled with excitement in his eyes. That's right. I was almost killed by it back then. A cold smile also appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. It's time for us to demand an explanation. Back when they were carrying out a mission from the Celestial Court, they had ventured deep into the vast land of blood to obtain the Kirin Blood Jade. However, they didn't think that they would be hunted down by the Divine Bat Emperor and a few other mighty figures at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage. If it weren't for the fact that Enlin had called for help from the Celestial Larch in time, the Divine Bat Emperor would most likely have killed them. I really should have yelled at it at the time. Don't bully me because I'm poor. Enlin was a little disgruntled. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes. Is it really that important? Enlin clenched his fists. Of course it is. It'll be even more satisfying to beat it up like that. I'm looking forward to your meeting, Tina giggled. Enlin smiled. I hope the Divine Bat Emperor has improved during these past 100 years. Otherwise, I won't be able to beat it up. Chapter 1622. The Heavenly Beast Divine Mountain was located in the south-central region of the sinister spirit beast cesspool, which was also the northern part of the Divine Bat Emperor's territory. With the speed of Enlin and the others, they would arrive in less than a day. Apparently, the Divine Bat Emperor is still brooding over the Kirin Blood Jade. Su Xiaolan chuckled. Then I'll give him a chance to take revenge? Enlin raised his head, brimming with confidence. A reminiscent expression appeared on Tina's face. Sigh, speaking of the Kirin Blood Jade, I wonder how Uncle Dongfang Zhuangshi is doing. Enlin also sighed with emotion as he recalled that honest middle-aged man. I heard from Xiaolan that Dongfang Zhuangshi has already reconstructed his divine body and recovered his Dao integration stage cultivation base. But because he had to do something, there has been no news of him for more than a decade? Tina nodded. That's right. He said he was going to retrieve something that originally belonged to him. Something that should belong to him? What is it that takes more than 10 years to get? Enlin was a little confused. He didn't know much about this information. Tina shook her little head. I didn't ask. Meanwhile, on the Heavenly Beast Divine Mountain, as one of the 5 divine mountains of the sinister spirit beast cesspool, it was quite a unique sight. It was over 150,000 feet tall and 80,000 feet wide. From the outside, it looked like a round bowl with a large head and small feet. The peak of the mountain was like a vast and boundless continent. There were countless palaces and magnificent palaces on it, as well as giant beasts with powerful auras moving about. Occasionally there would be the sound of explosions. It was a battle between bad-tempered beasts. The Heavenly Beast Divine Mountain was one of the 5 divine mountains of the sinister spirit beast cesspool and held an extremely lofty status. Furthermore, it was the territory of the Divine Bat Emperor, but even so, duels were still permitted here. It couldn't be helped. Fighting was a daily occurrence for the powerful beings of the sinister spirit beast cesspool. They would rather die than fight. Even the Divine Bat Emperor, a super mighty figure of the Tao integration stage, couldn't do anything about this. It could only set up a formation to reinforce the heavenly beast divine mountain in order to minimize the destructive power of the battle. A giant blue bat quickly flew over from the distant horizon. Wherever it passed, hurricanes swept for hundreds of miles, stirring up the winds and clouds in the sky. "It's the divine bat emperor!" a flaming elephant exclaimed with excitement. "What are you yelling about? Have you never seen the great emperor before?" A wind wolf glanced sideways. The flaming elephant glared at the wind wolf. "So what if I call you the divine bat emperor?" "None of your business." "Damn it! You're disturbing my rest. Why are you charging? Do you think I won't tear you apart?" Wind wolf's claws were on the ground, and MOC's wind blade domain began to appear. "Roar! Why would I be afraid of you? I'll crush you right now." The flaming elephant roared and began to run, causing the earth to tremble as it charged directly at the wind wolf. An earth-shattering battle broke out. Just like that, similar battles were taking place all over the heavenly beast divine mountain at the same time. From the looks of it, all of these battles had erupted due to the return of the divine bat emperor. Who knew what they had experienced? The divine bat emperor remained completely unperturbed and flew directly into the massive hole at the center of the divine mountain. Yes, the center of the divine mountain was not a magnificent building, but an incomparably huge cave entrance. There seemed to be a world inside, and it was an extremely magnificent cave. 5 giant minotaurs over 10,000 feet tall in red crystal immortal suits of armor held flaming sabers in their hands as they stood guard in 5 different directions. All of them were exuding return to void stage energy fluctuations, so they were clearly 5 extremely powerful immortal beasts. A small crack began to appear at the summit of the white clouds. 2 sneaky figures appeared. Oh no, it was 2 tall and broad figures, as well as a little fairy in a green dress with her emerald eyes. Wow. So this is the heavenly beast divine mountain? It really looks like a bowl filled with rice. Tina's eyes widened as she stared at the massive divine mountain, and she couldn't help but click her tongue in wonder. As the chef goddess of the celestial court, Su Xiaolan also nodded in agreement. The mountain is shaped like a bowl, and the soil inside is the rice. The lush grasslands and forests at the summit are the vegetables, and the lavish palaces and buildings are the meat. As for that pitch-black cave at the center, black wood ears? Heavenly Court Chef God Lin chimed in. Su Xiaolan faltered upon hearing this, and a hint of confusion appeared on her exquisitely beautiful features. Blackwood ear mushroom? It doesn't look like it. It's not that blackwood ear mushroom, it's that blackwood ear mushroom. Lin chuckled. Su Xiaolan faltered for a few seconds before a bright blush appeared on her face, and she slapped Lin on the shoulder. "Why, you're so shameless. How could you say something like that?" Tina stared blankly at the conversation between the two of them. She didn't quite understand what they were talking about. Perhaps the divine bat emperor has been in and out of that cave too many times, so it looks like blackwood ear mushroom. An enlightened expression appeared on Lin's face as he speculated. "Shut up." Su Xiaolan slapped Lin on the shoulder with an angry expression, and a blush appeared on her face again, making her appear as if she were a ripe peach. Lin chortled with glee. He felt like Su Xiaolan was particularly adorable at a time like this. No one had ever dared to make dirty jokes in front of Su Xiaolan in the past. If they did, her dragon sparrow sword would have slashed them mercilessly. However, this was Lin, so there was nothing Su Xiaolan could do. The divine bat emperor has entered the cave, so let's go in as well. Su Xiaolan couldn't do anything to Lin, so she could only change the subject. No, the heavenly beast divine mountain is the divine bat emperor's lair. This is its home ground, and the cave is its home ground. Who knows what other dangers are lurking in there? Lin had a cautious expression on his face. Why don't we wait for it to come out first? When it flies somewhere else, we'll tail it, and then launch a surprise attack. Su Xiaolan felt like this was a reasonable idea, so she nodded and waited with Enlin. 1 day passed, and one of the 5 minotaurs sneezed. However, there was still no movement in the inky black cave. 2 days passed, and 3 of the 5 minotaurs sneezed. However, there was still no movement in the inky black cave. 10 days passed. F***ck, we're not waiting anymore. Let's go down. The veins on Enlin's forehead bulged. Su Xiaolan was also a little impatient, but she still gave them a suitable reason. We should attack first before anything else happens. I'll listen to Giant Enlin. Tina sat on Enlin's shoulder and wrapped her arms around Enlin's neck, bringing with her a refreshing fragrance. The 3 of them immediately unleashed their void body mantra to conceal their auras before flying toward the massive cave. Not only that, but the 3 of them also unleashed Tina's divine technique, the heavenly breath technique, which could isolate all energy fluctuations and allow them to blend into nature. Now, even if a Tao integration stage super mighty figure were to release their divine sense, they wouldn't be able to detect the presence of Enlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina, thereby significantly increasing their chances of success. The 5 immortal minotaurs were completely oblivious to the fact that 3 figures had descended from the sky into the inky black cave. Chapter 16:23. Why does he have to run into a pitch-black cave instead of a luxurious palace? Enlin couldn't help but grumble. It's so damp and cold here, I really don't know why he's staying here. Also, that heaven-shattering attack of his was way too thrilling. Only Big Sister Steel Shadow can withstand that. The human wailed in anguish as his eyes gradually turned crimson, and his body suddenly turned black before hair began to grow on his body. Not only that, but his bones also began to crackle as his flesh and blood quickly split apart as bat wings sprouted from his back. There was a crimson gate there that was tightly shut, and it was impossible to see what was inside. After that, there were all types of traps and alarms, as well as all types of spell formations. A white light flashed through Enlin's eyes as he activated his divine inspection technique. He flicked a finger toward a loophole in one of the spell formations, and an opening appeared before him. That's all right, the defensive spell formation is useless now. As for physical defense, I have the earth fusion technique. All of the female bats began to giggle upon hearing this. Thankfully, there were words above the cave, and Enlin and the others immediately dove into the cave after seeing the Yin-Yang Palace. Nonsense. The Emperor is meeting important guests in the Yin-Yang Palace. How can we disturb him? The largest female bat yelled. What do we do? Not only can we not see anything, but even sound has been cut off, Su Xiaolan said in a quiet voice. Su Xiaolan and Enlin couldn't bear to look at her, but they had no choice but to listen. The Divine Bat Emperor had transformed into a miniature bat about 10 feet tall. The spell technique that was derived from the 6th stage of the Earth Lotus Supreme skill was the Earth Fusion technique, and it was a technique that was extremely compatible with the great Tao of Heaven and Earth, so it was completely flawless. The Divine Bat Emperor was clearly very elated, and it chuckled. The final experiment has been completed. This is the perfect specimen. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina received a crucial piece of information. The white jade-winged being also chuckled. Let's not think too much about this. We should be able to destroy the human race and convince the other 2 paramount heavenly gods to give up on purging all living beings on this continent. Let's go and release the blood ghost bats into the kingdom of the 9 states. As soon as he finished speaking, countless red figures appeared in front of him. They were like countless red candles burning in the night, erratic and strange. The humanoid creature was completely naked, and its body was engraved with all kinds of divine beast totems. On its back was a pair of blood-red bone wings with edges like blades. The white jade-winged skeleton nodded lightly. The conversion rate is very fast, and the conversion rate is 100%. In terms of strength, it's at the 2nd stage Tao body, which is enough. Once it enters the mortal world of the kingdom of the 9 states, it'll be able to cause an extremely rapid catastrophe. After all, the population of blood ghost bats can increase exponentially at an extremely fast rate. Unlin nodded. He knew what she meant. A group of cage fire bats, whose fur was as red as flames, were on high alert. But when Unlin and the other two swaggered past them, they did not react at all. At this time, Tina's usefulness showed itself. She could directly project the original karmic trajectory onto the cage fire bats' faces, giving them the illusion that nothing had changed. The bat screeched and pounced toward one of the humans at an extremely fast speed. Its fangs pierced into the human's neck, and a strange energy instantly flowed into the human's body. Unlin and the others continued deeper into the cave. The originally dark environment became brighter and brighter due to the strange glowing creatures on the cave walls. "Are you lonely, big sister? These are cage fire bats. Be careful, their sensory abilities are very special. They don't rely on their 5 senses or divine sense to sense things. Instead, they sense things through the karmic trajectory of all things in this world," Su Xiaolan warned in a quiet voice. Su Xiaolan smiled lightly. "The Divine Bat Emperor is a bat after all. After getting used to hanging in the cave, he probably won't like places that are too extravagant anymore." Emperor hasn't come to the Spring Fragrance Cave for a long time. The entire cave was brightly lit. "I'm just worried that Emperor has been holding back for too long. If he comes for one night, our bodies won't be able to handle it." The female bat had a very high status among the female bats. She had spoken, and all the other female bats nodded in agreement. "How about we go to the heaven-crushing sex void body mantra?" one of the female bats suggested. The heaven-crushing sex void body mantra was indeed bad *SS, but there was no way that it wouldn't be tainted by karmic trajectories. The humans in the metal cages screeched. The Divine Bat Emperor was in the Universal Palace. The Divine Bat Emperor bowed. "As you wish, Heavenly Venerate Yu Qiong." Unlin merged into the ground with Su Xiaolan and Tina before passing through the Crimson Gate and entering the mystical space. He then poked his head out of the ground. 2 bats abruptly pounced toward the 2 humans before transforming them into bats. Then, 4 bats pounced toward the 4 humans. 8 bats, 16 bats, 32 bats, Unlin and the others quickly arrived at the end of the cave with unstoppable force. Hiss hiss hiss, for example, when the 3 of them flew through the cave, they accidentally crashed into air molecules, thereby altering their trajectories. The fire cage bats couldn't see Unlin and the others, but they could detect that the trajectories of the air molecules had suddenly changed, thereby allowing them to determine that something was amiss. Soon, they descended to the surface of the cave, which appeared to be a small plaza. There were 5 different caves around it, most likely leading to 5 different places. They turned their eyes toward a massive metal cage, within which 100 naked humans were imprisoned. There was also a bat that was about the size of a human being with inky black fur and crimson eyes. Soon, all of the humans in the metal cage had been transformed into sinister bats with black fur and crimson eyes. "Now that you mention it, I'm also very scared." A few female bats began to make lewd remarks. "Especially his 18 sonic bullets, each and every one of them is lethal." It let loose a cruel cry before pouncing toward another human. After all, being able to glean some information about their enemies would be beneficial to their next mission. At this moment, a few seductive female bats strode out from one of the caves, chatting and laughing with one another. "Ha ha! Perhaps the entire human race of the Kingdom of the 9 States will be wiped out. If over 100 billion mortals are killed, the high-rank cultivators will all die. Who are they going to fight for?" The Divine Bat Emperor was extremely excited. "Perhaps the heavenly gods will recognize us and bestow upon us new powers." The cave was very large and deep, and Enlin and the others continued to descend as their surroundings began to darken. Within less than a minute, the humans had completely transformed into Black Bat. Chapter 1624. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina's expressions all shifted. Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong? That humanoid creature with jade-white wings was the most powerful being in the sinister spirit beast cesspool, Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong, who was at the Tao integration pinnacle stage? They were all wondering if they had come to the wrong place. In this situation, it was obviously not the best time to fight. Lin and the others had initially planned to end this battle as quickly as possible so that they could beat the Divine Bat Emperor into submission before Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong arrived. However, they didn't think that they would be together in the first place. No wonder the Divine Bat Emperor and Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong hadn't participated in the battle, even though the 4 Tao integration stage mythological beasts of the sinister spirit beast cesspool had all joined the heavenly human tribe. So they were doing research on the heavenly beast Divine Mountain? Lin was reminded of Resident Evil on Earth at the sight of these blood ghost bats. These blood ghost bats were even more terrifying than zombies. Not only were they extremely agile, but they could also fly and mutate humans into blood ghost bats in less than a minute. The speed and power of their transmission was not something that normal zombies could compare with. If no mighty figures intervened, the entire kingdom of the 9 states would become a living hell for these blood ghost bats in just a few days. Even if there were powerful cultivators intervening, there were still over 100 billion mortals. The transmission method was also far too freakish, and if they reacted any slower, they would still be unable to stop the spread of these blood ghost bats. Even if they paid a heavy price to stop them, the human race would still suffer heavy casualties. If the heavenly human tribe on other fronts also took this opportunity to attack the kingdom of the 9 states, the kingdom of the 9 states would most likely not be able to hold on. The more Lin thought about this, the more grave his expression became. The Divine Bat Emperor and Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong. If we fight them, our chances of winning are very low, Su Xiaolan transmitted her voice to Lin. Lin looked at the sinister blood ghost bats in the cages and transmitted his voice to them. But we can't retreat from this battle. If these blood ghost bats, which are even more terrifying than the plague, were to spread into the kingdom of the 9 states, a rare smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. What a coincidence, I'm thinking the same thing as you. Let's fight then. Little Na isn't afraid. Tina was full of battle intent. A super mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage was actually quite a headache to deal with. The god engulfing skeleton was at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, and even with the combined attacks of Lin and Su Xiaolan, they were only able to just barely gain the upper hand. Even with Black Spirit Snake's help, they were still unable to kill it. Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong was now on the same level as the god engulfing skeleton, but they had lost Black Spirit Snake and gained the Divine Bat Emperor. Lin and Su Xiaolan's decision to bury the blood ghost bats here forever was true, but they still needed to think about how to do it. If he recklessly charged out to fight them, not only would he not be able to stop their plan, but he would also lose his life. In terms of combat power, they had no advantage. Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong extended a hand toward one of the blood ghost bats in the cage, and a white spiral revolved over its palm. The blood ghost bat wailed with anguish as its body quickly aged and became riddled with wrinkles in just a few seconds. Less than a minute later, it had been reduced to a puddle of black blood. It's a pity that these mutated blood ghost bats have very poor life force. Under normal circumstances, they can only live for about 10 days. Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong narrowed its eyes. Haha. In 10 days, all of the humans in the kingdom of the 9 states will probably become blood ghost bat. So what if they all die after that? The Divine Bat Emperor didn't mind. We've lost a massive army. Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong shook its head and heaved a forlorn sigh. If they had an army of over 100 billion blood ghost bats, even if they weren't as powerful, they would still be an extremely terrifying ally to the sinister spirit beast cesspool. The two of them chatted as they opened the door and made their way toward the other rooms. Tina secretly unleashed her divine technique, Little Star, and followed behind the 2 Tao integration stage super mighty figures. After the door closed, Unlin and the others finally emerged from the ground. The blood ghost bats were still wailing as they clawed at the metal cages with sinister expressions. They clearly weren't very intelligent, but they were comparable to the zombies that Unlin knew of. The most terrifying power is not the power that is most hostile to mortals. Instead, it's the range in which the power spreads. The Divine Bat Emperor and Heavenly Venerate Yu Qiong have really developed something terrifying. Su Xiaolan's eyes gradually turned cold. Unlin nodded. This was similar to how humans were able to develop bombs, but they were still unable to destroy locusts. A bomb could kill tens of millions of locusts, but that was about it. There were hundreds of millions of locusts, and the rate at which they could be killed by a bomb was faster than the rate at which they could reproduce. If they wanted to destroy an entire swarm of locusts, they couldn't just rely on bombs. Instead, they had to rely on a terrifying power that was capable of spreading. This was also the reason why the Divine Bat Emperor wanted to destroy the human race. It wanted to start with mortals and use the terrifying spread of the blood ghost bats to wipe out all mortals in the kingdom of the Nine States. Su Xiaolan waved a hand through the air, and a holy flame flashed faintly. The 100 blood ghost bats in the metal cages were instantly incinerated into nothingness by the scorching temperatures. The Divine Bat Emperor cannot be allowed to live. Su Xiaolan spoke in a grave voice. Unlin nodded. If we want to stop this plan, we have to kill it. It's most likely the main culprit behind this plan. As a safety precaution, it's best if we kill Heavenly Venerate Yu Qiong as well. He unleashed his Earth Fusion technique and continued to tail the Divine Bat Emperor according to Tina's instructions. This time, they followed the Divine Bat Emperor to an incubation chamber. Unlin was greeted by the sight of over 1,000 black eggshells, all of which had been placed in a massive space. There were also many beast tribe powerful beings conducting all types of experiments and incubation. The Divine Bat Emperor pointed at the eggshells up ahead with a smile. Next, I'm going to place the mother eggs in all of the cities and villages in the Kingdom of the Nine States. When that time comes, the flames of war will be ignited. Heavenly Venerate Yu Qiong nodded. Very good. Let's prepare for battle now. Unlin, do you really think there's hope just because you destroyed the heavenly human tribe? The true despair has only just begun. A sinister smile appeared on the Divine Bat Emperor's face. I really want to see your expression of despair when you're faced with billions of blood ghost bats. I'm really looking forward to it. Unlin was astonished. The Divine Bat Emperor was still thinking about him even at a time like this? Was this the self-cultivation of a villain? What he didn't know was just how shocked the Divine Bat Emperor was after hearing about Unlin's resurrection and the destruction of the Southern Heavenly Gate. The Kirin Blood Jade incident surfaced in its mind again, and it was feeling extremely humiliated and enraged. Unlin, just wait for despair to descend upon you. The Divine Bat Emperor was extremely elated at the thought that it would finally be able to exact revenge after 100 years. Unlin was enraged. Just how much did this B***** hate him? Shouldn't he be the one getting revenge? Why was this bat so vengeful? Let me make a divination for this operation. Heavenly Venerate Yu Qiong smiled as it brought out a crystalline disc with countless blue particles of light dancing within it. It was just about to activate it when its expression suddenly faltered. Chapter 1625. The blue light particles danced on the crystal wheel, and it trembled slightly. The crystalline disc was exuding the energy fluctuations of a divine tool. Unlin's heart jolted with shock. At this moment, Heavenly Venerate Yu Qiong seemed to have sensed something, and it turned its gaze behind it, only to discover that there seemed to be a small star that was neither real nor illusionary. There were no energy fluctuations or interference with reality. It seemed to have instantly understood something, and its divine sense erupted forth like raging waves. "Who's there? Show yourself!" Heavenly Venerate Yu Qiong roared with rage. The aura of a mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage surged through the air. Weaker living beings would most likely be scared to death by this roar. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina were still as calm as ever, not giving themselves away in the slightest. However, they had underestimated Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong's power. Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong released its divine sense to its fullest extent, and the entire space around it seemed to have become black and white. Nothing could escape its detection. Enlin and the others could follow it when it wasn't paying attention. They had already unleashed their full power, so how were they supposed to conceal themselves? Here. Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong made a grabbing motion toward a certain spot in the air. Crack, 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 the space around them was sealed. Right at this moment, a streak of golden light tore through space in a violent manner. Enlin charged toward the Divine Bat Emperor at an extremely terrifying speed, and his aura was elevated to the very peak. Old Bat, didn't you want revenge? I'll give you a chance. The Divine Bat Emperor's mouth gaped open in astonishment at the sight of Enlin charging toward it. It was just fantasizing about the thrill of revenge, and Enlin was doing as it wished. At this moment, the muscles on Enlin's arm bulged, and boundless fire energy was compressed over and over again as the power of the 9th stage Earth Lotus Supreme skill surged into his arm. 3 times, Fire God Fist. Boundless golden light lit up the entire cave. Boom! The fist landed, instantly melting and shattering everything around it. This was the first time that Enlin had unleashed the Fire God Fist after cultivating his Earth Lotus Supreme skill to the pinnacle. Its power had more than doubled, and it was imbued with an extremely pure and boundless power of the earth that was compatible with the essence of the great Tao of heaven and earth. All the eggs in the incubation room were instantly annihilated. The golden fist tore through everything and directly pierced through the heavenly beast Divine Mountain. The heavenly beast Divine Mountain began to tremble violently. Over 100,000 beasts stopped what they were doing and stared down at the quaking earth beneath their feet in shock. The bottom of the mountain suddenly exploded, and a golden fist force pierced through and extended for dozens of miles. Hiss! What is this power? This divine mountain has been reinforced by a Tao integration stage spell formation. How could it have been broken so easily? Could it be that our great emperor blew himself up in an experiment? The beasts were all bewildered. At this moment, a giant blue bat had already been sent flying out of the heavenly beast Divine Mountain. Not far away from it, there was a living being with an extremely powerful aura that was chasing relentlessly. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! All of the beasts finally let loose cries of surprise. Looks like he's Enlin. My God! Why is Enlin here? Enlin had recently become quite the celebrity on the Taichu continent. Almost everyone knew about his glorious feats, and he was revered as a legend. Hence, his name was quite intimidating. At the very least, many of the beasts wore expressions of horror on their faces. Roar! Don't be afraid. Let's go kill him. Let's go together. If we kill him, we'll be the heroes of the beast tribe. The beasts of the sinister spirit beast cesspool weren't cowards like the ones from the opposite shore realm. Hence, after a brief moment of hesitation, all of them decided to attack Enlin. Right at this moment, the cry of a vermilion bird erupted between heaven and earth. Boom! Another violent explosion erupted. A pillar of white flames erupted from the summit of the heavenly beast Divine Mountain, piercing through the sky. Countless beasts turned their eyes toward the pillar of flames, and it was as if they could see an extremely regal holy beast, the vermilion bird, spreading its wings and flying into the sky. Bam! Space tremored violently. A jade-white figure shattered the pillar of holy flames with a single punch. The woman fell from the sky before crashing heavily into the summit of the Divine Mountain, creating a massive crater. That's the Divine Phoenix Maiden? The man who just attacked. My God! Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong is here as well. Some of the beast tribe mighty figures let loose cries of surprise as their bodies trembled with excitement. Most of them were looking up at the man in the sky with reverence in their eyes. The 4 mythological beasts of the sinister spirit beast cesspool were all violent and often fought with one another. In the past, the powerful beings under the divine Bat Emperor's banner were still enemies with Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong. However, they revered powerful beings, and Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong was the most powerful being in the sinister spirit beast cesspool, so countless beasts were extremely respectful toward it. Have Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong and the divine Bat Emperor joined forces? This is great. If we can kill Enlin and the divine Phoenix Maiden, the name of our beast tribe will be renowned throughout the entire continent. Countless beast tribe powerful beings yelled with excitement. Some of the beast tribe powerful beings pounced toward Enlin, while others pounced toward Su Xiaolan. Even spirit beasts of the spirit nurturing stage wanted to participate in this battle. It wanted to brag to the other beasts or its descendants that it had once participated in such a magnificent and shocking top-notch battle. Then, just as they were thinking this, they were suddenly frozen by the cold air that descended from the sky, and their lives were cut off. The entire summit of the mountain was instantly transformed into a realm of ice and snow. All beasts below the soul formation stage were frozen to death. The fairy held the heart lotus ice sword in her hand as she stood in the sky. Her golden wings of light exuded a holy divine light under the sun, and an extraordinary divine intent enshrouded heaven and earth. Your opponent is me. The voice was as cold as the heavens looking down upon all living beings. All of the surviving beast tribe powerful beings shuddered, and they were struck by the feeling that the paramount god of the sky was speaking to them. The peerless sense of oppression made it impossible for them to muster up any battle intent. Moo! Don't be scared. Show me the courage of our beast tribe. A minotaur guardian over 10,000 feet tall roared with rage before pouncing toward Tina. The other 4 return to void stage minotaur guardians also roared as they pounced toward Tina. A series of powerful auras soared into the sky as the return to void stage immortal beasts pounced toward the fairy in the sky. There were a total of 12 return to void stage mighty figures among them. At the same time, the battle had already erupted at the location where Enlin was situated. Enlin had already decided that he was going to unleash his powers from the get-go. He and Su Xiaolan had agreed that Su Xiaolan would hold off Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong for him, and he would crush the Divine Bat Emperor in the most devastating manner possible. Only then would the two of them be able to focus on dealing with Heavenly Venerate Yuqiong.